Well, hello, everyone. We are live, I think, on Facebook and YouTube, and we are here for our 3-hour live stream. This is going to be amazing. We've got some amazing guests. We've got amazing content. So let us know that we are on. That always helps me to know that somebody's listening. It feels very hard to just talk into the wind. I'm in a big old room by myself, and talking to myself isn't pleasant. So, hi, Beverly. Thank you so much for telling me that you're here from West Virginia. Who else is here? Love to see you here. We have 3 hours of packed information. For those of you who are in Conquer or considering joining Conquer, you will not want to miss this. So let us know, YouTubers, can you let us know that we're live and everything is a go so that we can get going? And I'm going to take a sip of my coffee while we do that. Try to clear my throat a little bit. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for letting me know you're here from St. Louis, from Florida, from West Virginia. All right, we're ready to roll. We're ready to roll. And I hope you can stay the whole time because we have a lot of fun information to give you and hard information to give you, but information that will be life-saving and life-changing. So welcome so much to here, to our live stream. British Columbia, welcome, Sylvia. So glad to see you here. Do we have any other internationals here? I would love to see if you're here from another country. We have Conquer Women in London. We have Conquer Women in Australia, all over the globe. And so we would love to hear from you if you're here. Let me tell you how today's going to work because we have a lot of information for you. I know most of you probably will not be able to stay the whole 3 hours. It will be recorded for you. Conquer is now open. If you have not joined yet, tomorrow is your last day. Today, I'm going to share some things with you on healthy and unhealthy relationships. I'm going to answer your questions, and I'm going to invite, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. I'm going to invite 3 different women who are in our Conquer membership to share their stories and how Conquer has helped them. And you're going to meet some of my team, and then I'll answer your questions about Conquer because we're going to close our doors tomorrow. And I want you to be really clear whether Conquer is for you or Conquer is not for you. And if Conquer is for you, we don't want you to miss this opportunity because Conquer won't be open again for another 6 months. So we only open it twice a year in September and in April or March. And so we just want to make sure that you know for sure, is this for me right now or is this not for me right now? And it's okay if it's not for you, but if it is for you and you're hesitant, you really have nothing to lose by joining. So let's set an intention right now. Before we even get into our content, I want you to practice something. Hello, another Canadian. Thank you for letting me know, Kathy. I want you to practice something that we practice in Conquer. Did you know that you get to choose how you're going to show up? But most of us don't even think about it. We just show up. And then that's our default mode. We're not really thinking about how we want to experience something. So let's set an intention right here, right now, about how we want to experience this moment. Howard, I think our kitchen sink just went on. Can you go turn it off, please? Our kitchen sink just went on. I can hear it in the background. We have this automatic kitchen sink, and it's been giving us problems, and I'm hearing the sink go on as I'm talking to you. So this is life, and this is life in our home, so this is how it is. So let's go back to our intention. So how do we set an intention so that we can show up in the best possible way? Because otherwise we just show up, and we don't really think about how we want to show up. So let's set an intention that we're going to be here and nowhere else. Okay, well, how do we do that? How do we do that? Well, first, you might want to turn off other distractions, like my sink that just automatically went on. The devil's getting to me this morning, and I have to set an intention. Hey, I want to be here in a calm, peaceful way. I don't want to be anxious about anything, so I have to set that intention. And when the sink just went off, that made me a little nervous. Like, what's going on in my sink? So sometimes we can get distracted. So maybe I want to be undistractable and I need to turn off my cell phone so it doesn't ping me. How else do you want to be here? Put in the chat. Write it down. So if you set intention how you want to show up, you're more likely to show up that way. I'll give you a couple suggestions. I want to be present. I don't want to be distracted with multitasking. I want to hear what these ladies have to say who are in Conquer. How did it help them? Yeah. I want to be open. Yeah. Saved by Grace says, I want to have an open mind. I want to be curious. What is this membership about? What could I get from this? I don't want you to ignore your baby, Kathy. I am completely here except for the baby, and the baby gets priority for sure, for sure. Babies are so important. Diane, so glad to see you. No worries. We just got started. We're setting our intention. How do you want to be here in this moment? Write it down. Write it down. How do you want to be here? I want to stop the pain from this separation. Okay. And so sometimes pain informs us that we're hurting, and it's okay. That's life. Jesus says, in this world, you will have pain, but don't be so afraid of it. Just welcome the pain of grief, of loss, of your marriage isn't what you thought it would be. Your husband isn't who you thought he was. And that's painful. And we don't want to just numb ourselves to life's realities, because then we can't experience the joy and the beauty of life either. The thing about pain is we're afraid of it. So in Conquer, we teach you how to manage your pain, how to deal with your pain without being afraid of it. Because Jesus tells us in this world, you will have pain. You will, because it's an imperfect, broken world. And so we don't want to be afraid of it. Yeah, clarity. I want to come here getting clarity. I want to be here unafraid. I want to grow to be healthy for my children. Really, really good things. Yesterday, I read something that made me press pause. And I'd like you to grab a pen and paper, because I believe the next 3 hours can change your life. So I'm a paper pen girl. I'm an old-fashioned girl. I don't tend to write on tablets too much. I love my paper and pen. I do have a Remarkable, which is like paper on a tablet, but I want to have it on my paper so I can find it, right? I want to be teachable. Thank you, Bonnie. I love that. I want to be teachable too. I always want to be teachable. This is our 3-hour call. Yes, Jana, this is our 3-hour call. So we're going to start. We're starting right now with an intention, and I'm going to share something with you, and I want you to think about it, okay? I love when I read something that makes me stop and pause and reflect, something I didn't think about before. And I've been doing a lot of that lately. I guess because I'm getting older, I really want to live this last chapters of my life. I'm in the 4th quarter here, and I want to live them well. I have had a life well lived, but I want to end well. And I see so many ministry leaders crash and burn at the end of their life with serious sin and horrible financial mismanagement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's not how I want to be. And so I pay attention to how I show up and how I want to live my life. But I read this. Let me read it to you. Humans are not driven by the past, but we're pulled forward by the future we're most committed to. And when I read that, I thought there's something more to this. And I added a word, so I'm going to add it here. Humans are not driven by the past, but we're pulled forward by the future we most want to create. So take a moment and reflect. What kind of future would you like to create for yourself? Starting here, starting now. What kind of future would you like to create for yourself, for your children, in the next 5 weeks? By Thanksgiving, what kind of future would you like to create for yourself? In the next 5 months, in the new year, in the next 5 years. Picture that future. 2030, 5 years from now, what's that future look like? You're different. You're stronger. You're more capable. You're safe. You're secure. You're no longer walking on eggshells or bending over backwards to make someone else happy. You feel like you inside. You know who you are. You know what you want. You have good relationships with other people, loving relationships, safe relationships, people who know you and value you for you, not for what you do for them. Picture her. Picture who she is. Strong, noble, confident, who can smile at the future unafraid. And invite her just in a minute or two to tell you how she created that kind of future for yourself. Invite your future self to give you some clues about what she did 5 years ago, right here, right now, to create the kind of future she's living now, 5 years later. Write down a few words. Write down a few words. Yeah, I want to be adventurous. I do too. Secure, I've become much more adventurous in my old age. One that glorifies God. I want to respond and not react. Physically healthy. I want to thrive, not to survive. Peaceful, peaceful. I set my intention every day. I always do. Every morning I set my intention. What do I want to experience today? And peaceful is always my first word. Always my first word. Right? Yeah. Because, for some of you, your past, if you look back 5 years or 10 years or 30 years or 50 years, how many years you look back, it might be full of trauma. It might be full of abuse. Or for some of you, it might be pretty good, your past, but today's a mess. Your marriage is destructive and you're not just hurt, your kids are hurt and you're not sure what to do. But the most important question now is, what kind of future are you committed to building, to creating for yourself, for your kids, and for your future self? What kind of future are you most committed to create for yourself, your kiddos, and your future self? You see, if you know where you want to go, you're more likely to get there. How many of you have ever gotten in your car and you have no idea where to go? You can spend as much time and gas driving in circles going nowhere because you have no destination. And many of us live our life exactly like that. We have no destination of where we want to go. And so we just are encircling the drain all the time and feeling like we're wasting our life and going nowhere. That isn't how God wants you to live, my friend. He wants you to become your best self, even in adversity. Sometimes because of adversity, you become your best self. Joseph in Genesis became his best self in the worst of circumstances. Maybe that's what it takes. The Apostle Paul learned how to be content while he was sitting in jail. Don't be afraid of hard. Hard is sometimes our best motivator to become someone different. This may be your moment, friends, to be the woman that God's called you to be. And if you're a Christian woman in a destructive marriage or separating from one right now, I believe that you will need help and support moving toward a safe and relationally healthy future. Because I have met many women who have gotten out of one destructive relationship and gotten into another one because they didn't do their own work at getting healthy. And so, what kind of future are you most committed to creating for yourself? And let's just put in the chat for right now, in the next 6 to 12 months. What would you like to be different about you? Not about him, you don't have any control over him, but about you. I don't just want to be a comfortable Christian. April, you said gold right there, because we have an idol of comfort in our world. We don't want anything to make us uncomfortable, whether someone says something that we don't know how to answer or we're in a situation that we don't know how to handle. Understand, God allows these situations for us to grow, not to be afraid of. Comfort is wonderful at periods of time, but when we live for the idol of comfort, we will not grow. We will not grow. Comfort's a respite, but it's not a growth spot. It's not a growth spot. Teresa says, I want to be fearless. I want to be fearless. Yeah. Yeah, Beverly wants to not be or feel like a victim all the time. And part of that is choice, right? I have choices here. Victims don't have choices. Ladies, we live in the United States. There are a lot of women. I've been in different countries. I've been in Iraq. I've been in Cambodia. I've been in Cuba. I've been in Russia. Some of these women don't have the choices that you have here for your safety and your sanity and your growth. You have a lot of resources here to help you. Conquer is one of them, but it's not the only one. You can get help. Don't see yourself as a damsel in distress. See yourself as a warrior woman who is going to fight for herself, her kids, and her future, not in a bad way, in God's way. God tells us that we have weapons that are not like the world's weapons, but we have weapons, because how do we overcome evil with good if we don't fight? But we have to learn what that kind of fight looks like. Yeah, I want to experience stability. I want to be decisive, dependable, committed, adventurous, fearless. Yeah, and so ask yourself, what would it take to get there? Moving on from the idea, the fantasy that I will have a healthy helpmate and friend. Yeah, sometimes it is a fantasy. Healthy people, what? Live in truth. And so I told you I would help you understand the difference between unhealthy and healthy. And a lot of times we look at our husbands as unhealthy and ourselves as healthy. But we may just be as unhealthy in a very different way. So, real quickly, I'm going to draw a chart for you. You know how I like to draw for you guys. And let me just draw something really quickly. And then we're going to invite our first guest to be a part of our conversation. Janet's going to be here. She's waiting in the wings. So, if we have a little ruler, I'll do it this way. All right. We have a little ruler, and the middle of the ruler is 0. And then we have 1, 2, 3, and -1, -2. This is healthy, -3. Okay. And so if healthy looks like around here, right? So we're going to talk about 3 as being unhealthy, narcissism. Okay. Selfishness. Okay. If we want to use a biblical word, unhealthy narcissism. All right. Nobody wants to be over here if you're in your right mind, but a lot of you are married to somebody over here. But if you're married to somebody over here, guess where you are probably? You're probably over here. Oh, what? This is unhealthy selflessness. Oh, but that's so biblical. That's so biblical to be selfless. Not at this end, just like it's sometimes healthy to be selfish, like right here. Like it's selfish to say, no, you can't have access to my ATM card. It's a healthy selfish. A healthy selfish is, hey, it's my birthday. I'd like to be celebrated. That's a healthy selfishness. It's not me first all the time, but I am going to steward my life. I'm going to steward my boundaries. I'm going to steward my health. I'm going to steward my money. I'm going to steward my sexuality. I'm not letting someone take it from me in their selfishness. Because a selfish person over here would never marry someone here because they wouldn't put up with that. They wouldn't put up with that. So because we put up with that, we have to look at our side of the street here. Not that it caused him to be this way, it didn't. But it's dancing a destructive dynamic together. Right? He orders, I cower. He tells me what to do, I do it. I don't have a no, I don't have a say because I have to help him. And we think this is our noble self. This is our unhealthy self, just as this is an unhealthy self. So in Conquer, what we help you do is get safe first. But then as we start you to start moving forward to getting healthy, not over here, but just like right around here, all right? You can't control what he does, but all of a sudden he's not going to like you anymore if you're not always doing what he wants. Because you need to stay in this role for this to work. And some of you are already over to 2, right? You've already started to do your work, but you're feeling guilty because he doesn't like it. And you're feeling pressure to move back over here because that's what God wants. That is not what God wants. Don't virtualize this. This is unhealthy, just like this is. And so in Conquer, we help you begin to take those baby steps forward and understand what's happening as you start to feel afraid. Because actually, when I've worked with narcissistic people in my counseling practice, and we would try to help them move to here, you know how they would feel? If I helped a selfish husband move to just one step towards more healthy selfishness, he would feel like, I feel like I'm licking her boots all the time. He wouldn't use the word boots, he'd use a different word. But you know what I'm saying? It felt really uncomfortable for him. And the same for you as you start to stick up for yourself, as you start to have boundaries, as you start to have your no, it's going to feel uncomfortable, not because it's wrong, but because you're not used to being healthy and strong. In Conquer, I don't want you just to get clear about your marriage. That's certainly a good goal. But in Conquer, we want you to grow to be your best, healthiest self because your children deserve one healthy parent. And we see what's happening to our kids today. They're a mess. They're full of anxiety and depression, and they don't know how to manage their emotions because we haven't taught them because we don't know how to manage ours. This is something we need to learn, ladies, and pass it on to our children. And if we're all dysregulated in a home, it's all going south. Because someone who's dysregulated and flipping out and they flip us out and all the kids are flipped out. It's a circus. And we need to take responsibility for ourselves to get clear, calm, and healthy. That is God's will for you. More than staying married, it is God's will for you to mature and live a godly life. He would rather you get out of an unhealthy, toxic marriage so that you can get healthy than for you to stay unhealthy and oppressed and victimized so that you stay married legally. Is that really honoring God the most? But it's scary. It's scary for you to have to do your work to grow up, to be an adult, to make decisions, to get a job, to take care of yourself. Some of you have never had to do that. And now you might have to. And that might be the best thing in the world for you to do. But it's scary. And you do need support. And you want to take baby steps that direction. You don't want to take a big old leap off the cliff before you have your wings to fly. All right? So we are going to invite Conquer Women to talk to you about her experience with her destructive marriage. So Janet, I'm going to invite you up here. Hold on. Hi, Janet.
Hello.
We're so glad and thankful that you're willing to come on and share your story. And let me just introduce Janet a little bit for you. She loves Jesus. She has since she's been a little girl. She's been active in church ministry, leadership, homeschool community, all the things. Right, Janet? While home educating her 5 children, she also played an active role in family farming and ranching business. And so, Janet, you were married for 35 years. And for the outside, you looked like the perfect Christian family. But behind closed doors, it was a completely different story. Can you share a little bit of what you're comfortable with, what your marriage looked like on the outside, and what you were actually living with on the inside?
Oh, wow. It was, if I could, it was so subtle for so long that, that I just didn't know what was happening. My husband and I met him while I was, attended a Christian college, and, he presented everything that, I was looking for. I wanted to be involved in ministry. That was just my heart. I'm just involved in discipleship and just all the things. And he was a football captain, and on all of it was a Christian school, and he was chosen to be the liaison to the school board. He was chosen to be on the president's council. He was a resident assistant. He was just very active in leadership. And through the years, he's a dynamic Bible teacher. And there are so many people who are walking closer with Jesus because of the teaching that he gave. And through the years, it was absolutely never physical. So I never thought that I didn't even know what the term abuse meant. And so there were several distinct changes through the years when we made changes in our business. We farmed with my family for, 9 years, and then had our own farm and ranch. And as we got more and more isolated, because we lived, our nearest neighbors were two miles away, there were just shifts that happened through the years. It was the subtlety. There was praise, and then there were just maybe hours or days or months later, there was a comment that even referred back to a past praise, just a little dig. And it was just, by year 30, it was just so confusing. And behind
Sounds like the frog in the boiling water. You just didn't know it was hotter and hotter, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Mm-hmm. And for my intro, as soon as you said, when I joined Conquer and you talked about overfunctioning, it was like, oh yes, that's me to the core. I mean, so that was so helpful to have have language to describe what I had been in, because I had, I read all the marriage books. Of course, I was the one who read the marriage books, and worked to apply that. But there aren't any Christian marriage books that I read that talked about when a relationship wasn't mutual or when it wasn't reciprocal. And so I tried harder and tried harder.
Yeah. You had a couple serious health crises that you talked about, and one after surgery, one after an allergic reaction where you couldn't breathe. Tell me about what your husband did in those situations. So you just talked about, hey, this relationship wasn't mutual and it wasn't reciprocal. And so in that part of where you needed him to step up because you were having a health crisis, what did he do in those situations? And what did the Lord tell you?
Well, it was a very, before I got to surgery, it had been a year of recognizing that I had a serious health issue and I didn't know what it was. And he was opposed to me getting medical care. And there was a point about 6 months before surgery, and it was the year COVID. So it was difficult to get medical care. But I realized that there was this switch that's like, if I don't care for myself, no one else will. And I started standing up and saying, I am making a doctor appointment, and him acting in rage. But it was subtle. It was just, remember when I said, well, I did make a doctor appointment today. And he said, well, I never told you couldn't make a doctor appointment. And at that point, I started resonating. It's like, this isn't safe. I can't trust him with my heart. And so then I got to surgery, and I had a very aggressive cancer that was stage 4 by that time. And after surgery, there's so much chaos with trying to get labs, waiting for labs. But I came home from the hospital. I couldn't speak. It was thyroid cancer, and it had spread all through my neck, lymph nodes. And because that I couldn't speak, I was very weak. I sat on the couch, and 24 hours passed, and there was no attention. There was no care whatsoever. And I finally flagged him down to ask if he could get me something to eat and something to drink. So through this time, I recovered from surgery. I had asked to go to counseling for 18 years. These were all things happening together. I had insisted on going to counseling. We started just a few weeks before surgery. After surgery, he refused to go back to counseling because the counselor looked at him and said, you know what, there's some things that you really need to address. And then he refused to go to counseling. So that was pivotal. It's like, okay, I've walked Matthew 18 with him. I've gone to him for 34 years. And now I've insisted on going to counseling to bring someone else with me. And now he's refused that. So I know what Matthew 18, what the next verse says. And so what do I do then? And so in a time of sitting with the Lord, just saying, what do I do next? I heard in my head, you'll need to divorce him. It was so matter of fact. And being in a Christian community where it's like, I read in all the books, you never mention divorce. And because I love the Lord, I never even thought about that. I was in the position that, of course, we could work this out. We both had the Holy Spirit. We could make this work. And so when I heard that, it stopped me. And I said, Lord, I know that's from you because I've never allowed myself to speak that, much less think that.
Janet, that's so powerful. And one of the things that you're describing that I just want to clarify for the women here is you're describing this kind of relationship that we just talked about.
Oh, absolutely. Just
where someone is incredibly selfish, and what you are to them is this. You are an object to use. You are a cell phone wife. You're a wife. You're a role. the fact that he didn't even see you as a person after surgery, didn't say, can I help you? Do you need a drink? Are you okay? He didn't even think about you because you weren't in the picture. You couldn't serve him in that moment. So you were irrelevant to him. It's like your cell phone being dead. You're not going to look for your cell phone if your cell phone's dead. And so you're talking about this experience, and this is so untalked about in the church, of gross indifference, that you don't matter, you as a person, what you need. I need to go to the doctor. I need to go to the hospital. You had another incident with an allergy attack. Describe what happened there.
By this time, I had already heard, you're going to need to divorce him. I had made it through chemo and radiation on my own. I got myself to treatment. It was excruciatingly painful. And the chemo caused some allergic reactions. So it was Easter Sunday. We went out to dinner. I had a reaction. We lived half an hour from town. So we were 10 miles from town. And I started feeling this restriction in my throat. And I stopped him from talking. And I said, I think we're going to need to turn around and go to the hospital. I had to tell him twice. He slowly found a place to turn around, and he drove 45 miles an hour back towards the hospital and took his foot off the gas several times. And as I was sitting there, I had already come through experiencing 5 oncologists telling me expect to be terminal. And here I was sitting cancer-free. And in that moment, I said, Lord, you are the one who gives me breath. I've known for so long that I can't trust him with my heart, but now I can't trust him with my life. You're the one, it's like my life is in your hands. And as I was sitting there, I worked at relaxing as much as possible, knowing that I had gained so much self-control over the years to not react, because I knew that was the worst thing. It would fuel him. And so I remained calm and silent. And by the time we got back to the hospital, I could feel that I was probably going to be okay. But it was right in that moment that Conquer opened, and I joined, and it was a line for me.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. How did it help you at first when you were like, so this was never a path you would have picked, and God sort of pushed you in there actually through the adversity? And here's, ladies, I want you to pay attention. Her experience of having this allergic reaction was what woke her up to her husband's gross indifference. I don't know if he wanted you to die on the way to the hospital or what, because he was driving so slow without any urgency. It was like, oops, now I can get rid of her and find someone else. I'm not sure. I hate to put that motive on him, but I'm sure you felt terrified.
Well, I was able to think through, it's like, this is insidious. And this is what Dateline specials are made of.
Yeah.
For this would be a way that I could die that no one would ever know. But it doesn't mean that murder isn't in his heart.
Yeah.
And God knows, and God sees, and God has a plan in this.
Yeah.
And through the years, I had learned to, by year 2, 3 of years of our marriage, when I said, it seems like you think you're right about everything. It's so difficult to have a conversation with you. And he blatantly said, well, I am right. And as a 25-year-old at that point in time, it's like, well, no one's right about everything. You want to react. And it's like, but then through the years, it was a game. And I confronted in a time of non-conflict. I did all the right things, but it was a game for him. And understanding through the counseling I've done, more recently, then understanding that control was an addiction for him, not unlike porn or alcohol or drugs. And so as long as I was in that space for him to control me, then I was the drug for him. And over time, then I realized, like, I have to get out for my safety. But then the most loving thing for me to do, And that's what I learned through those decision quadrants that you gave us. The most loving thing for me to do was to separate myself from him so that he couldn't use me as his drug.
Yeah. And I think this is so kind of God, because we don't want to mess up his life. You know, he's crying or whatever he's doing. And maybe adversity will be his best teacher too,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because as long as he can medicate himself and delude himself, I'm fine as long as I can micromanage your life.
Right.
And be the king of the home. When he turns out to realize I'm not all that powerful at all, that's going to create a possibility for a crisis for him too. And God cares about your husbands as well, ladies.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we enable their dysfunction by thinking we're being biblical, by submitting, by overfunctioning, by doing what he says, right?
And it had, over the years, it had been gotten so comfortable to be in that -3 space of this extreme selflessness and sacrifice for my children, for the business, for my husband, for everything that I had. There was a lot of that had kept me, but it was very silenced and dormant. And yeah.
Yeah. As you began to go through the Conquer materials, Janet, what were some of the aha moments that shifted for you, that shifted inside you to help you get healthier, not just to get safe? You realized at that car drive, I'm not safe with this man. I have to get safe. But what was it that started to wake you up to, oh my gosh, I have to get healthy? It's not just he's unhealthy. I have to get healthy.
Oh, wow. That was so fantastic. And I love that part of how I've grown, because we lived very rurally with the farming and ranching. My husband was always around. And so I would, I was recovering from chemo, very weak, but I would leave the house and walk outside. We had very poor reception. So sometimes it took me 40 minutes to listen to a 15-minute Leslie video, but it was gut punching. I remember where I was walking when I heard you say that someone in that type of relationship was actually targeted for their kindness and their generosity. And it's like, oh, yes. I've so focused on my kindness and walking with the Lord in that's actually what it was. And so it was difficult to acknowledge that I had been gullible and I had been taken advantage of, for 35 years by that time. So then watching more videos, and as I already mentioned, it's like you said over functioning. It's like, oh, that's why I'm so exhausted, because I'm trying to do things that aren't my responsibility. And so it was so much work to sit and think and journal, and it's like, and even learn, like, what is my responsibility and what isn't my responsibility? And as I look at what's not my responsibility, that's so much where I was functioning instead of functioning in what I was responsible for. Another soup, probably because it was so scary, because it felt dangerous now at home. There was a shift from all of this niceness on the top for so many years. And now I was seeing this insidious level where it really wasn't safe, but no one would ever know that it wasn't safe for me. You shared that fear and excitement are two sides of the same emotion. And it's like that. I felt that in my spirit when you shared that. And I saw the word picture. It's like, yes, through the years, I love roller coasters. And so when I was like, that's what I do when I'm standing in line for a roller coaster. I'll find that I'm so scared. I'm so terrified. And I knew I was able to shift my mind. It's like, I love roller coasters. Why am I scared of being on a roller coaster? There's a 99.9% chance that I'm going to get off on the other side and have this exhilarating experience and love it. So I knew from that experience how I could shift my mind while standing in line in a roller coaster, that I could also do that because another thing that I did that you mentioned was, you said, I would say out loud to myself, I am not alone. God is with me. I can do this. And so as I felt that fear rising, I would speak those words out loud. I would think through, this is actually an adventure. If I can think about it as an adventure, I can do this. And so in my mind, because we were so isolated, there was no one, no one close to us. There was nowhere to run. It was me and God. And I thought, this is what it's like to live as a spy. It's like you'd have to be completely calm. You'd never let on what you're doing. I wrote a little card and I stuck it in my desk so that I would remember it. I said, never underestimate your enemy. And I, as soon as that fear rose, I thought, this is what God has called me to do. And I had to justify, there was enough legalism in me. I had to justify what I was doing because it felt wrong to not be completely open and honest. But it wasn't safe. And there was just a lot of wrestling through that time. But especially on the other side, this was 4.5 years ago that I was walking that path. I just see God's hand in every little piece of how he was teaching me as I was leaning in him for the next step and the next step, because all I could do was, I was so weak still, all I could do was the next step each time.
And I love that you say that, Janet, because don't ever, those of you who are listening who are considering joining Conquer, it's not like, oh, I have to get divorced. No, you don't. What you have to do is you have to start to recognize this is unhealthy. And what's my part of the unhealthy? You can't change his part. And as you began to change your part, you began to notice he also changed. He got more obviously unhealthy.
Yes.
Before he had that nice veneer on the top, so you couldn't really tell. You thought it was more you. But as you stopped being a -3 and as you started to get healthier, that negative veneer began to crack and you began to see it wasn't like, oh, there's really a good guy underneath all that. There's really something much more sinister underneath all that. And that helped you then, oh, my next right step isn't reconciliation. My next right step is I've got to get out of here. And you did that, but you didn't do it immediately. And I think this is really important, ladies, to hear the story, because one of the things you're saying, Janet, is you were so isolated, but you had Conquer, you had the Facebook group, you had the women in Conquer, even though they were online. How did that help you to have that community?
Oh, wow. It was an absolute lifeline. So I had your videos. And there was the coaching on there, and your mentors were so helpful in how I could post what I was experiencing. And my posts are still on Conquer, from back 4.5 years ago when I did a poke the bear experiment. And it's like, oh my goodness, that's who he is. And this gives me more information. And I could be calm and work at growing more into responding and gaining more clarity, because I was so in such a confused space. So then when I used your decision-making quadrants, I watched your video on decision-making, and I wrote out, what's the best thing that can happen if I do this? What's the worst thing that can happen if I do this? What's the best thing that can happen if I don't do this? What's the worst thing that can happen if I don't do this? As I could calmly put that down, and had a very logic, because I'm a pretty logical numbers person, could put it down and I could see it. There was nothing good that would come of in love for him. Is the most loving thing for me to do, to leave because of my situation. And there was nothing good that would happen if I stayed. And so I worked through your book and checked off all the boxes on the safety plan, and had to sneak around the house and sneak things out of the house to do that, to get safe. I had to drive 30 minutes into town. I found someone that just in the last 2 weeks before I left, it wasn't safe for me to talk to anyone locally until, because there wasn't anyone that I could trust. And it was an incredible time. And I'm glad I can look back on it and I see mistakes, or not mistakes, things certainly I could have done differently. And I can accept that. It's like, but I did that.
Mm-hmm. And our mistakes, again, are all learning curves.
Yeah,
They're places for us to get more information. Oops, I didn't know how to do that well enough. I need to learn how to do that better,
right,
right? Mm-hmm.
right.
What would you say to a woman who's listening who isn't sure whether Conquer would be a right fit for them?
Oh, Conquer isn't a replacement for therapy, but Conquer gives something that therapy can't give. And it was in the community, the education, the language that supplied that I didn't know. I just wasn't aware of. I wasn't aware of the abuse dynamics. And it gave me such clarity. It brought such peace in the midst of that incredible chaos. At that point in time, I had something very solid to hold onto. And even though there was so much fear with that community, I had the support I needed to make the decision for me to do the next thing and the next thing. So for me, it provided a lifeline. It provided the way to make that next step, to make the future. And I love how you started out with envisioning what your future could be like, because I'm walking in that now and I can't wait. I'm just so excited to keep growing my future. And it's because of what I experienced in my marriage. It's what I experienced by going through Conquer and learning so much in such a short amount of time. It's what I've learned with being able to help other women decode and figure out what's going on in their marriages.
How are you different now, Janet? You're still kind and generous, right? You're still that, but how are you different?
I'm more willing to speak up for the truth. I am growing in being more and more confident, and I love that. It feels so good because I have, because of the extreme estrangement that I had from my family and the church after when I left and had to leave surprisingly, it helped me to lean into Jesus and know how he is my best friend. Mm-hmm. So, and Conquer is what was the lifeline that gave me what I needed to do that. So I would absolutely say it is such a reasonable cost to jump in, and you can figure out what's for you. And then there are other opportunities for more growth. I don't know why. How can I say this without telling you need to join? But do it for you. Your life is worth it. And if it's not for you, you haven't lost anything. You'll gain something from it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because as I started Conquer, it was more for women who were in destructive marriages, and it still is geared toward that. But I've really seen the importance of helping those women not just get out of a bad marriage, but get healthier inside so they don't get another bad marriage. Because some of our Conquer sisters have been married a few times because they've not learned what they needed to learn, their side of the street. And so they kind of got swept off their feet again by another person who knows how to do that very well, and they're in the same situation. And so I'm so glad, Janet, that you shared your story and that you're getting lots of kudos in the chat, but that you did your work and that you're doing your work. I'm still doing my work. I'm 73. Every day I do my work. That's just like every day you take a bath and brush your teeth so that you show up on your best self. Every day we do our work, and we've not been taught how to do that or what that looks like. So I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share, Leslie.
Anything else you'd like to say before we close?
Well, I turned 60 this year, and it was so when I turned 50, 10 years ago this month, we were making a big move where we moved our ranch from one state to another state. It was that increased the isolation. Then I had this stage 4 cancer journey, this estrangement, the divorce, this intense learning. As I was approaching my 60th birthday, I thought I was recollecting what had happened the past decade. And I was saying, Lord, man, I hope my next decade is like so much more, is not like this last decade. And because of Conquer, I had the ability to look, it's like, oh my goodness, that's victim mentality. It's like, look what I did the last decade. It's like, wow, that has just prepared me for my next decade. Lord, what in the world do you have in store for me next? Growing in concerning joy when we encounter these trials because of what it produces in us. I feel like that's where I'm walking right now. And I do the next hard thing. And it's those hard things. I'm in the middle of some hard things right now. And it is hard, but I have the tools to feel this grounded relationship and this closeness with the Lord that I have because of what I experienced through my 35-year marriage, what my kids are having to figure out because they still can't get that divorce was an okay thing. And it's my story. It's part of their story. And God is at work.
Mm-hmm.
And I love my life.
Mm-hmm. Oh, what a wonderful way to close. I love my life. How many of you who are watching this could say that honestly? I love my life. God wants us to love our life, even if it's a hard life, that we're to experience his joy, even in the hard. And one of the things I'm hearing you say, Janet, and I just want to emphasize, and I've come to this place too, I'm not afraid of hard. Nobody likes it. Nobody likes hard. Mm-hmm. But it's like that roller coaster. When you talked about a mindset shift several times, and when you see hard as, wow, God, I'd rather not have to, walk in the mud right now. But if you're going to teach me something cool that's going to take me to my more noble self, I'm not going to be afraid of this. I can do this. And so there's a very different mindset with that than, oh, why me? Why do I have to go through this again? This is so unfair. Why are you doing this to me, God? Maybe because God is saying, I've got juicy plans for you on the other side.
Juicy plans. I love that.
that you need some muscles for. And so you're going to learn your leg muscles are going to get stronger as you trud through that mud. And by the other side, you're going to use those leg muscles for something really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Thank you so much for sharing. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
I'll let you go. All right. Take care. God bless. Wow. That was amazing, wasn't it? Let's give Janet just a kudos for being here and just sharing her story and being so vulnerable and honest. I think it's really helpful for you to see real women who do their work and how they come out the other side. There wasn't anything dramatic. She didn't talk about, oh, I was, running from my life. She talked about most of your stories. You're living in a marriage where someone devalues you in a regular way. I just did a podcast. It'll be out on Monday on domestic violence. And what does the Bible have to say about an abusive relationship? And it really talks about this dishonoring, devaluing you as a person. That's what abusive relationships look like. It's not just about hitting or raping you. It's about devaluing your person as an image bearer of God, that you're more of a role as an animal would be, not a human being created in God's image. And so I think this is really important that you understand that you are responsible, not your husband, to steward your one precious life. And if he's doing something that is smothering you from doing that, what are you going to do? Are you going to allow that to happen? Are you going to stay anemic because he likes you better that way? But what if God is saying, girlfriend, I want you to grow? So I'm going to invite Tammy to our stage next. Tammy is also a Conquer sister. And hi, Tammy.
Hi.
Oh, I see my picture there. Look at that. That looks familiar. Tammy has been in Conquer. So if you see that picture I paint. And so those of you know who I paint. I give them away to our Conquer sisters at our Conquer conference as prizes for doing things or just door prizes, things like that. So thank you for showing it to everyone. That is one of the saddest paintings I ever did because she has tears coming out of her eyes. And, it reminded me so much of many of you when I first get to meet you, that you're just so hurt, and that there's a resilience and strength to her as she stands up strong and faces her pain. So Tammy, just share a little bit about your story, that you knew that there were red flags even before you got married to this man. As many of you who are listening know that, you know that there's some things wrong, and we kind of fool ourselves into thinking that love will change that and we can help him. And what was your life like with this man for 25 years?
So when we started dating, which I have to say I had several abusive relationships prior to him, so this was not the first time. And he had some drug use, alcohol, pornography, some deception. And when we were dating, he even said, I'm not good for you, which just kind of makes me laugh because it's like, hello, you're telling me you're not good for me, and I still ignored it. So we ended up getting married, and he still had addictions, and it just gradually got worse throughout the years. We were together for 25 years. And he kind of had an odd theme, in my opinion. He drank every other night. And he would come home from work, and we kind of knew, that was the night he'd be drinking. And he would go in his den, and that's kind of his drinking, read the newspaper, pornography. I mean, the kids obviously probably didn't know that, hopefully, but that's kind of how every other night was. And we kind of waited to ask him certain questions depending on which night it was. Is it going to be kind, or is it going to be, the Jekyll and Hyde kind of personality? And he would sometimes wake up the kids at like 1 or 2 in the morning and be yelling and cursing at them that they hadn't done their chores that I had asked them to do during the day. And he would tend to cook his dinner, 1, 2 a.m. in the morning on our gas stove. And I would always be afraid that we might burn in our sleep. I'd go to bed crying, or am I going to be able to get my kids out of their beds and get them out of the house? I'd wake up in the morning and see like the burnt towel sitting next to the stove. So I knew what he had been doing. I also like to share that the scripture that kind of kept me stuck was 1 Corinthians 7:12 through 15. And verse 13 says, if any believing woman has an unbelieving husband and he consents to live with her, she must not live with him. So I grew up in the church, and so did he, but he was no longer following Jesus. He wanted nothing to do with him.
Mm-hmm. And so the verse said she must not leave him. Is that what it said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of looked at that verse, and when I researched divorce, and I felt like God was saying you need to stay in this relationship.
Mm-hmm. So then there was, getting worse, as it usually does. And
Mm-hmm.
one night things escalated that became a turning point for you. What happened that finally pushed you to say, maybe it's time to leave?
Mm-hmm. So one night he cornered me in the bedroom with a bowl of rotting food, and he was drunk, and he was swearing and yelling at me. And he ended up pushing me down on the bed with his hand in my face. And I started yelling no and screaming, and that's when 2 of my children came in and broke it up. He ended up apologizing and saying that should have never happened. But for me, that was kind of my turning point. That was like, I can't do this anymore. And I kept hearing God say, there's more to life. There's more to life than this. So I had been secretly planning for over 5 years to leave, and kind of stashing supplies. Like when you go to Costco, I'd be stashing toothbrushes and stuff. I thought that I'm not going to leave unless I can provide for me and my kids. Now I can look back and say that was kind of silly, not trusting that God would provide everything we needed.
Mhm.
And I ended up filing for divorce, and he was served, and my boys didn't know what I was planning, only my daughter did. And when he got served, which was kind of prematurely, and my daughter and I went and we grabbed our clothes and we left, and we never went back home except for, our
Was
house
there a big age
belongings.
difference between your daughters and your boys, or your daughter and your boys?
Yes, my youngest and my oldest have 9.5 years difference.
Okay.
Yeah, she was a little closer. I think she was like 14 when we left.
Okay.
Yeah,
And your boys were adults?
they were considered adults.
Mhm.
And when we did leave, I had quite a few friends saying, we can take you and your daughter, but we can't take you and your boys. And going into a shelter was difficult because they don't take boys after a certain age. So that also kind of kept me stuck of how am I going to leave and provide housing for all four of us. I was a stay-at-home mom and didn't really have the income. So that kind of kept me stuck for a long time.
Mhm.
Um,
So how'd you find
he
Conquer? Yeah.
How did I find Conquer? So my good friend finally told me about it. She had been doing Conquer for a while, and she was afraid actually to tell me. And I asked her why, and she said she was ashamed. We were friends. I knew her husband, so I also didn't think I could afford it. So I was binge watching every free video you had on YouTube. That was kind of my daily routine. And like a week later, I saw you in Hobby Lobby. I, I
This is so
didn't,
funny. When I read it, I remember some of these things, but it was just so funny that you said that.
yeah, I didn't say anything to you. You were, I believe, with your grandchildren. And then one night I was working a shift that I don't normally work. And you and your husband came to eat at the restaurant, and you were driving the wrong way, or he was driving the wrong way, I should say.
He was driving the wrong way, yeah.
I don't blame you. I blame you, driver. And I had to step out in front of you and say, excuse me, but you're going the wrong way. And I just said, hey, I'm inside watching all your videos at work. And I kind of realized, okay, God, you've put Leslie in front of me 3 times now, and I need to really pay attention to that. And when I asked him about it, he said, I heard him say, I can take someone's wrong turn and divinely put them in the place that they should be, which I think is very powerful. And that's kind of when I decided I need to join Conquer. And I'll tell you, I didn't join right away because I had missed that fall session. So now I had to go on a wait list and wait another 6 months. So that was hard.
And so, Tammy, as you've joined Conquer and been a part, what have been some of the growth areas for you, your biggest shifts and aha moments?
Um, you know, I had already been divorced when I started Conquer, so but I didn't really fully understand um, everything that went on in my marriage, and um, I didn't have the correct language for everything. It wasn't always physical. It was mostly, emotionally and verbally abusive.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the community is very loving. I felt loved and valued for the first time. I felt heard. I felt like somebody actually believed my story. I mean, we could probably share each other's stories. Like, even when I was listening to Janet, I was like, yes, 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 on everything she was, saying about how God was changing her life, and how I always say, like, this has been between my relationship with God, growing me there, not necessarily everything my husband did to me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
One of my highest values is connection. So having a community of a few thousand people has been very rewarding, in my opinion. I love that part. I love connecting with people.
Have you been able to connect with some of the local Conquer sisters?
I have. We've
Mhm.
gone, I've gone to dinner with some people. I've gone to the movies. I met people at conference. We've kept in touch. It's a special relationship.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. So I know that I still have some healing to do. I feel like that's a never ending thing. Um, I had lost my alimony a couple years ago, and I was contemplating if I should stop Conquer. I actually did stop, and then I was asked if I wanted to be a mentor, and I was like, oh my goodness, like I've always known that this is kind of part of my purpose and my plan. God told me 30 years ago that I'd be helping women in abusive situations. I just didn't really know what that would look like. So it's looks like it's happening.
We're so glad. We're so
Yeah.
glad. Tammy is such a generous giver. She's always very
Thank
tenderhearted
you.
that way. And you're just very sweet with
Thank
your
you.
kindness toward people. We're honored that you would be a mentor in our group.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if someone's listening and saying, is it worth it? Is it worth it? What would you tell her?
I would definitely tell her that she's worth it. I came out of marriage not feeling like I was worth it, and it's slowly getting a little better. Um, I would definitely say you're worth it. In my marriage, I didn't feel like I had a choice. I didn't know I could say, no, this can't be happening. So now that I have a choice, I'm like, I need to figure out how to make this work for me to get healthier. And I've done several different counseling, and I can say I've seen way more growth out of Conquer than in my counseling sessions. Um, I just, I also wanted to say that if you're not really sure if this is for you, ask God. He'll let you know. He'll tell you. And he told me that it was time to go, and I was disobedient. So I feel like if he does tell you and he gives you an answer, to be obedient, because mine became physical, and that dangerous to me and the kids.
Mm-hmm. And how's your daughter handling this? Because I think that's a mama's heart. Everybody's wondering. Now, your sons, were they his children as well? Or were they?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So how have your children handled this? Because I think this is a big concern for lots of women listening is, oh, my kids are going to be destroyed if I break up the family, not realizing he's already broken the family. You're just
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging it. But if I end this marriage and separate, everybody's going to be mad at me. My kids are going to be mad at me. How have your kids handled that?
I'm not really sure that the boys fully understand everything. There's been kind of minimal contact between them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to remember too, they're at that age where they're kind of doing their own thing. My daughter, I think, she's known more, and she sees through what her father's done. So there's just probably a different perspective with the boys and my daughter. Um, I think they will always struggle. None of them have really gotten any help or counsel. My daughter got a little bit of counsel, but it's just hard. If I look back, I definitely would have left sooner.
Mm-hmm.
It affects them.
It does affect them. And I'm so glad that you're working on getting healthy because your kids need one healthy parent. And so, if we look at the generational sins of, the sins that fathers
Mm-hmm.
and the mothers are passed down,
Mm-hmm.
not only just culturally what they see in a home, but biologically, trauma is passed on in the
Mm-hmm.
next generation. They show that the startle reflex, like I have a huge startle reflex because of my trauma. But I think that my children have anxiety and startle reflex not because they had any trauma in their childhood, at least that I know of, But I think some of that just gets passed on to the next generation through your genetics, and studies and epigenetics are showing that. And so we just need to be wise, that we're stewards of the gifts that God has given us, and our children are precious gifts. And if we're allowing them to be in an environment where they're being harmed, not maybe physically, but you see them being depressed and anxious and can't function, you can't learn and grow when you live in an environment that's not safe. And so I think you're not alone, Tammy. Most of the women that I talk to say, I wish I would have left earlier. If I would have known what I know now, I wish I would have left earlier. And so I think that's really important for us to acknowledge out loud that sometimes we have regrets that we weren't strong enough to leave earlier.
Yes, yes. And I also wanted to say, like, don't be afraid to share with somebody what's going on in your life. You could always be saving a family member. You could be saving your best friend. Like, don't be afraid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. Thanks so much for sharing. Anything else you'd like to say before we end this?
I just appreciate you letting me share my story.
Well, and I appreciate you being willing to. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. God bless. All right. We've got another person, Hillary, waiting on deck, but let's all take a deep breath because this is heavy stuff. And I think one of the things that each woman, Janet and Tammy, have said that has helped them tremendously is that they got words to make sense of the confusion inside. And one of the things a good parent does, and you all have done this for your children at some level, is help children find the right word. So when they're having a fit and you know it's because they're hungry and tired, you're saying, I know you're upset because you're hungry and mommy hasn't gotten, your dinner ready yet. I'll be there right in a minute. So you're giving them words to make sense of the biological and emotional confusion storm inside. And this is what a good parent does. They clarify, oh, you're angry because your sister took your toy and you feel really angry inside, but you can't hit your sister. So you're teaching them emotional recognition and emotional regulation. Sadly, sometimes you were never taught that. And so you don't know how to do that. They don't know how to do that. And it's your husband doesn't know how to do that. And it's a free for all. And so one of the things that helps us learn is words, to put words to, oh, this isn't just normal. This is dishonoring. This is dishonoring means that this is wrong, and having the words to describe what's going on can bring you great clarity and calmness. Because once you have the words to describe, then you can make a plan on what to do with it. When you go to your doctor and you say, I don't feel well, and they say, well, what's hurting? And you can't describe anything, your doctor doesn't know where to go with that. But when you have the words to describe some of that for them, then they know, oh, I need to give you a check for your gallbladder because it's down here and this is the pain that you're having. But this is part of your maturing process to gain the words to describe, at least to yourself, what's happening so that you can also help your children create the words and find the words to help them understand what's happening inside, because that's what healthy people do. They have the words to use to clarify for themselves what to do. And sometimes there's a difference between the experience might be the same. Like I think Janet did a really beautiful job at saying, here's the experience. I'm going through a hard time. What are the words I'm going to use to describe that? That creates your future, right? We started this session by how do you create your future? So let me give you an example. If I'm considering joining Conquer and I'm using the words, I can't do it. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. This is too hard. I'm never going to get through this. My husband's not going to like it. Even if you join Conquer, you're probably not going to have a great moment in it because you've already set yourself up for it not working through your words. Do you see how you've done that? But what if you said, I'm going to join Conquer and maybe I can't afford it for more than 6 months, but I'm going to suck everything I can out of those women because I need help and I'm going to learn all I can because God has put me in this moment. This is my Esther moment. I'm going to do it or I'm going to perish and I've got to do it and I'm going to do it and I'm going to learn what I have to learn. I'm going to get all the support I need to grow the way I need to grow. Can you imagine the different experience each woman will have in Conquer with one kind of set of words, one set of mindset? about her future self and another set of words inside of her head about how she's going to handle something, it creates your experience. Your words create reality in many ways, right? And so I want you to learn these tools. I want you to learn them so you can help your children grow up and be healthier and not live afraid. Jesus tells us and God tells us perfect love casts out fear. We don't have to live afraid. And I just wrote a blog this week about that topic, when a woman was afraid to decide about divorce and what should she do. And so if that's you, I would encourage you to read the blog, but also join Conquer. Try it. Try it. Conquer is a program that I developed when I turned 60. Sometimes when we get old, we think, oh, all that, I didn't know I was going to do that. But God did some work in me, and I, realized that this was something to do. And so this is amazing that God still uses us as we get older. Sometimes he uses us more than we ever thought he would use us. Our story isn't over just because we've got some wrinkles. Your story may just start. Don't shortchange yourself and tell yourself negative words. I can't. It's too hard. I'm too old. It won't work for me. These words are the words that will create your future story. Is that the story you want to create? I don't think so. I don't think so. If you're still here, I don't think so. So challenge that. Learn to use your words wisely. Life and death is in the power of your words too. The words you speak over yourself, the words you speak to yourself, create the experience that you're going to have, even in hard. Words, so here's how I've changed my words. When I'm in something really, really hard, instead of using the words, why is this happening to me? Why, God? I don't use those words anymore. I say, God, why is this happening for me? What muscles do I need to learn? What is it here that you wouldn't put me here if I didn't have something to do or learn? So why am I here? Help me to learn what I need to learn, because I don't want to be here as long as I used to be here, because I wasn't willing to learn what I needed to learn. What do I need to learn? What's here? And so now I'm not afraid of hard anymore. I don't like it, but I'm not afraid of it, because it's been good for me to learn what I needed to learn. So we're going to invite Hillary up, and one more woman from Conquer is going to share her story. Let me bring you up, Hillary. Here you go. Hi, girlfriend.
Hi, how are you?
You look so cute. I wish I have to wear hats when I walk now because of the medication I'm taking. I can't get any sun, but I wish I looked as cute as you do in that hat.
Thank you.
I love it. I'm so glad you're here. Hillary, you are, you've been in Conquer. You've been married 28 years. And you shared that so much of your experience of abuse was really the direction that your husband did toward your kids. Tell us what that looked like and how that made you feel as a mama, that their daddy was not being a good-hearted daddy, but he was mean-spirited and cruel.
I think a lot of it, he grew up in a very abusive childhood, so a lot of harshness was normal. He was also an officer in the military, and he was used to grown men doing what he told them exactly how he told them to do it. And it was very hard for him when they were little, when they wouldn't obey, and he was very harsh. Thankfully, I guess he deployed quite a bit, and so I was the one at home. I was the one doing the majority of the discipline. And he also had a fun side and, kind of a silly side, and he liked to play with them. So everything seemed fine. He was selfish, which I certainly noticed soon after marriage. And I just always thought he could be selfish, but I could be unselfish. So I think we didn't have much of a marriage, but I wanted it to work. I wanted to be a godly wife. I read lots and lots of books. I read scripture, and I was just committed that I was going to obey God. He had an addiction, which I found out about 6 years into our marriage, and that caused problems. But I was committed for this marriage to work, and he had a 13-month long deployment. I had a baby during that time, so here I have 6 kids under 11, and it was hard. And he came back, and lots of PTSD. After a year in theater, it was just very hard, and he was very angry, probably not at me, but it was directed at me. It was directed at my kids. He was very unhappy. He was very unhappy that the kids were disrespectful and blamed me. And I thought, man, I kept them all alive. I thought I was doing a good job. Um, but it was very hard because of their ages and just getting into that tween stage when, and we homeschooled, my kids and I were very close. So sometimes we would be joking about something and he would take it as they were being disrespectful. And, I would try and talk to him privately and tell him, I am not against you. I just think, you're harming the kids in your language. He would discipline them while looking at his phone and never even look up, just rule as if he was, on a throne. And one day I just said, you cannot be harsh with them. This is not right. Scripturally, he's a believer. And, we were in church every time the doors were open. And I mean, I just basically put myself in front of him. Like, you just can't treat them like this. And it was a very difficult time because I felt like he turned on me. He did not trust me, because I stood up to him. And what I now realize is I never told him no. No matter what he asked me to do. If he wanted me to scratch his back every night, I did. And I never felt like I had a choice, but I could put myself last, but I couldn't put my kids last. And when I put myself out there and said, this cannot happen anymore, he turned on me. And it was very difficult. We had some very, very difficult years. We were in a church where I felt there was no one we could go to. Looking back, I wish I had gone actually to the military. The military is very serious about taking care of people and taking care of wives. His deployment was by himself. A lot of times, guys get pulled for specific missions, and he wasn't with the unit, so there wasn't that support maybe that I had.
Yeah. So you said in 2023 you were in a low point and you went to counseling. When you came back, your daughter noticed something. Can you take us back to that moment and what happened and how you handled it from there?
Right. He retired about 3 years after his deployment. And for 5 years, we just kind of wandered. And God moved us to a different area, to a much, much healthier church. And at that church, they offered counseling. In fact, one of the pastors was a PhD in biblical counseling. And I signed up almost immediately. And, you know, during this time, my husband had started seminary. He knew there were problems. And so he started seminary, which blew my mind. And that's kind of a whole nother story, but this is my story, not his. Um, but I would go to counseling and, I'm thankful he really got help for his addiction, which, that was a blessing. But I would go and just come back and feel like I didn't know what had happened, but it wasn't helping. And it was really devastating. And my daughter just told me, Mom, every time you come home, you're so distraught and in despair. And the counselor told me I couldn't see my sin. And I thought, man, I mean, I've been walking with God a long time. I read the Bible, I understand it. And I now realize he just had no concept of abuse. And I couldn't verbalize that. So I could not even utter those words. But it was very, very difficult.
And so you came across this pamphlet in church, which is cool. What opened your eyes in that moment of discovery and what happened?
I think I was in so much confusion and just like I've never doubted God was good. I've always known God was good. I lost a baby probably 10 years prior to this, and it was sad and it was hard and I struggled and I had grief, but I knew God was good and I knew God had a purpose and I never doubted that God was good, but I didn't know. I just couldn't, I had no idea. Like I knew I was doing the right things and I knew he wasn't doing the right things and I knew I couldn't make him do the right things. But the pamphlet referenced, it was just a small pamphlet. It referenced your book. It referenced Darby's book, Is It Abuse? And I ordered them and they came in and I could not stop reading them. And it was like God washed over me that I was not crazy and that all this turmoil in my life had a name. And I wasn't just saying it's abusive because he didn't hit me. But as I learned, I mean, I was checking like every box. I was like, man, there's every form of abuse. And nobody, I mean, nobody would ever know. And most people don't know still. Um, but anyway, when I took the quiz and I found Conquer, I think I started looking at some of your content on YouTube, but it was just kind of a perfect time. And I found Conquer and it was just such a blessing. And after I joined, ironically, the very first welcome call that we had, it was a long one, and I was, like, in my bathroom. I was, like, in the bathtub, so I could get away from everybody, all these 6 kids, right? And, I was just listening to it with my earbuds, just so thankful that I could be there, and then you had a drawing for one-on-one counseling session and you called my name and I just burst into tears and I'm not a crier, but I just burst into tears and it was like God said, I see you. I love you and this will work out.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And so as you shared in your notes in that counseling call or in that coaching call, I said that you were too focused on your husband. And how did that help you? Because you started to get words to describe what was going on. And even those words, hey, Hillary, your focus is on, it certainly was on God, but it was so much on him. How did that help you make a shift?
Well, I think it wasn't overnight. And when I first joined Conquer, I was so amazed. People would always say, like, oh, God gave me clarity. And I would think, this just does not make sense. Like, I don't understand how you get clarity. But I just went through the first awakening and, safety and all those modules. And it started to make sense. And I, would look up the Bible verses and use that like for my Bible study. And then it like maybe I listened to a video or something on self-care but I started walking and I started listening to Conquer videos and I could listen to, 3 Conquer videos a day walking. And then I printed out all the notes, and I made this big notebook in alphabetical order. So because I could listen to a lot more than I could like work through with the Bible study. But I think through that, I realized that I was just enabling him, and I had grown up, my mother was an enabler. Um, my dad was very verbally abusive and probably psychologically as well, but I realized that I had grown up, and so everything in my marriage was what I thought was normal. I didn't even know that that's not how it was for everybody, and so
Mhm.
I'm trying to be a good wife, and really, I'm just enabling him. And it didn't matter how much I did, it was never enough, nothing was ever good enough, and just honestly, just listening to the videos and time after time, there were times that I would go back to the same one and, I probably listened to most of them twice and some of them a lot more than twice, but it's just like you especially giving words to, passages of scripture maybe that I'd heard taught differently, and I just realized, like, I have listened to one side of life, and you just opened up a whole new world for me that I can be a godly woman and not be a doormat. And I can be kind to my husband, and he can pout. And if he pouts, that's fine. But I don't have to absorb that.
Right. Powerful, powerful freedom for you, huh? That
Yes.
you're not responsible to fix his life. That's why ladies, that's why you're never enough, because you can never fix his life. No matter what you do, it's never going to be enough, because it's not your job to fix his life. It's his job to fix his life. And so now you've lost two lives, your lives and his life, because you're so busy trying to fix his life, which isn't working. And your life is going to pop because you're not attending to it. So you begin to shift directions and say, okay, God, what do I need to learn? How do I need to grow? And what are some of the things that you began to realize? I loved what you said about resentment. What did resentment do?
Well, I think because I was always enabling, he had time to take naps, and I pretty much do all the housework, all the yard work with the help of my kids, I must say. But even when I would ask for help, he wouldn't help. And so a lot of times it was very easy for me to be resentful, and I didn't want to be resentful, but it's like how can you not be resentful? And one day when he was on his second nap of the day, I walked past, and man, I was just like, this is just so unfair. And I sat down and I opened up my Facebook and I was reading on the Conquer site, and somebody had posted, it was the very first post, and it said something about resentment is like jealousy. And I was like, oh, that's it. And it was just like God used that to really help me realize that you resent someone when you're jealous of them. But then I thought, I'm not jealous of him because I don't want to take 2 naps a day. I just want to be able to like rest when I'm tired or rest when I'm sick. And I don't know, it was just God used that picture. And many, many times in the Facebook page, I would read something and somebody would ask a question that I had thought. And so Conquer has just been so helpful. There have been times I've asked questions that I thought were so dumb, or how do you X, Y, or Z? And I feel like people were so patient with me and just so kind. I realized just very recently, I just didn't have a lot of support in my life. I don't have sisters. My mom got Alzheimer's at 51, died at
Oh, wow.
64. And so she maybe would have been I mean, I got along with her, but I didn't have that support. I moved every 3 years being in the military, so I make friends very easily, but it's very hard to go deep with people. And so when 6 months into a relationship, you're not telling somebody how bad your marriage is, especially at church. I never wanted to slander my husband, and I felt like it would be slandering him. And a lot of people in my church don't know what's going on, but I know I'm growing, and God has given me about 3 women from my church and a few that aren't in my church that know what is going on, and that has really helped me so much.
Mm-hmm. Hillary, so you're choosing to stay well for now. And so, what are some of the things that you're doing now that you're growing and you're not over functioning to manage his moods? One of the things you said is, I have some boundaries. I've stopped asking permission. Can you tell us more about that? I don't absorb his moods anymore, because I think everyone who's listening is like, all right, what did she learn to do?
Right. Honestly, boundaries was something that I did not understand much at all. I've read Cloud's book about boundaries. That was super helpful. Um, but it's easy to read books about boundaries, and it's kind of hard to set boundaries. And I was very fearful, but within a couple months of starting Conquer, a lot of sexual coercion was part of our story, and I just very calmly just told him that I was very uncomfortable, and he did not like it, but he was very because he had been in the military. He taught sexual harassment briefs, and he knew all the rules. And he was very, very aware when I spoke to him. He was very aware that it was not right. And he didn't like it, and he argued with me for a long time over it. But it's been almost 2 years, and I have stuck to the boundary, and I think in a lot of ways he doesn't like it, but he accepts it, and he doesn't give me a hard time. And then there's just some smaller boundaries. He used to want me to cut his hair all the time, and I've done some lousy haircuts in the military, but he wanted me to cut his hair, and finally I just said, "I'm not doing it because you've yelled at me," and he didn't like it. but I've just stuck to my guns. And I think almost you gave me permission that it was okay to say, "No, I'm not going to do that." Because I wasn't a bad wife because I didn't cut his hair. Like there's
Mhm.
many women in the world who don't cut their husband's hair and they're good wives. And I think I just taken upon so many things that were hard for me. And so I feel like I've learned to, at least, probably not perfectly, but I've learned to listen to me. Like if I'm not comfortable doing it, well, why am I not comfortable? And so I've learned to ask that question. And I think you have just really, really helped me to realize that sometimes if I have a feeling, it's actually like my body telling me something is wrong. And I just kind of started doing things that I wanted to do. He would work and he would want to come home and do nothing. So on the weekends, like I would want to spend time with him, which meant sitting at home doing nothing. And I just decided that I was going to do stuff. And I've taken several trips to see some of my friends, that I've met all over with their kids. I still have 2 kids at home. And he's invited, but he doesn't want to go. And so I say, goodbye. Have a nice time. I'll see you when I get back. And I think that's been very, very freeing for me because I feel like, you know what, my marriage may not improve. And it has improved some, Leslie. It really has. And we actually went back to a different marriage counselor, and he sent my husband to a trauma counselor, and he's going sometimes. But I have just realized that it may never get better. Like our marriage may not ever be good. Um, but I'm definitely thankful that God has me in Conquer, and it has been a true blessing.
Mhm. So what I'm hearing you say is your marriage may never be good, but you can be good.
Right. And I think one thing that you said about acting from your big circle that has so influenced me in other areas of my life where people do things that aren't right or aren't appropriate, but I don't have to retaliate and I don't even have to cut off my relationship with them. I can just say, you know what? That's who they are, but I'm not going to act like that. And so it's actually very empowering because I can choose how I want to show up. And I don't, but I also have permission to feel hurt, but I don't have to act from that hurt.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And, these are the things that really empower you to be the woman that God called you to be. And, you called her your big circle. We've changed it to your noble self. That's a little bit more clear about what that is, the person that God calls you to be, not just your reactive self. And so many of us are stuck in our reactive self because we're reacting to all the dysfunction. We're reacting to the hurt. We're reacting to the abuse. And rightly so, there should be some reaction to that, but that's not who we want to be. And so we have to move on from that in order to steward our life so we're not living in reactive mode all the time. And it sounds like you've really learned how to do that well. You told me that at Conquer it first felt like it would be a financial strain. So how did you manage that mindset first? Oh, this is, a lot of money or too much money for me to spend on me. And is it worth the cost? Talk to the women who's sitting out there saying, well, I don't know if my husband's going to be mad at me if I spend this money, or maybe they're just feeling like I don't know if I can spend this money. There's a lot of money for just me.
Well, I am very, very frugal by nature. I grew up pretty poor, and I had not really ever had my own money. I homeschooled. I had 6 kids. I didn't have a lot of time, and God had given me a small part-time job, and I was able to save some money. I did not have a lot of money saved. My husband was wanting me to pay for gas out of it. Anyway, um, and it just, I think I was just so tired of living the way things were that I thought, what is the worst that can happen? If I spend $300, what is the worst that can happen? Like, it's not that good, but it's like, that's really not that much money. My husband probably has been scammed out of that much money. So he never actually knew that I spent the money, but I just decided, you know what? Like, I have this part time job. God gave it to me. Like, all my needs are met. And so, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I think God just, like, I just think God gave me the nudge, and I thought, I'm just going to do it, like I'm over 50. And so I can live crazy. So I guess maybe it was part of living crazy, but I actually ended up, I was just going to join monthly, but it was like cheaper to join for 12 months. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to drop it all right here. And I'm so thankful I did, because there's annual bonus calls that you get from your annual membership, and you don't have to think about it every month. And, the first year was over and I was like, man, that's a lot of money. I don't know if I should do it. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. And so here I am going on my third year and I'm signed up again. And if you think about it, $370 for 1 year, that's like three, maybe four counseling sessions, but you get a lot of camaraderie. And I don't know about anybody else. Sometimes it's like at 11:30 at night when everybody's gone to bed and I'm like, Lord, I don't know how to deal with this. This is just so hard. And I could just go and I could share my heart. And even while I slept, people would write in. And so I would wake up in the morning and I would read responses. And it wasn't just the help that the responses were good, but I felt so loved and cared for. And I think, honestly, being loved and cared for is probably worth it. But the videos are by far my favorite part of Conquer. I don't always get to join calls because I still have a very active household, and that's why I'm sitting in my car. But yes, if I would just tell anybody, if you are on the fence, just do it. You have nothing to lose. I mean, it's a little bit of money, but money is easy to come by, very easy to come by. Even if you're sitting home doing nothing, you can babysit, or I watch puppies for people. It's not like super glamorous, but I mean, I get a workout, so I get exercise, and God just worked it all out.
Oh, Hillary, thank you so much. This is very inspiring. I see in the chat people are encouraged by you. Being a military wife, I think that really resonates with a lot of people, because on the one hand, you have so much compassion for what your husband's been through and his trauma and all that, and you don't want to, mitigate that. But again, when someone has had trauma, whether you had it from your childhood or you've had it from the military, and it's impacting your life now, and you're not willing to do anything with it, does that mean that we just have to allow it to continue to harm us, or do we have to have some boundaries? And so you've, been able to stay well. And it sounds like as you've grown and you've set your boundaries, your husband has become easier to live with, just because you're not feeling so resentful anymore by all of that.
Right. And mostly I wasn't doing it for him. Honestly, I was mostly doing it for myself, because just many, many years of living in resentment and hardness and just lack of sleep because I was so alone has taken its toll on my health. And so, yes, if you're 35, join today, so you're not where I am at 55.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much. I appreciate you for sharing. All right.
Thanks
have a
for
good day.
having me.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. Get the right button here. I'm using 2 buttons. Thank you. That was so inspiring. And I just love to hear the stories. So one of the things Hillary mentioned is that she won a call with me. So I get probably 2 to 3 to 4 Instagram DMs a day, or Facebook DM saying, can I talk to you? No, I don't talk to people other than here. I give a lot of stuff away for absolute free. If you want to pay, I'll talk to you, but you will pay a lot of money so I can help other people with that money. So I don't do individual work anymore, except for with our Conquer Sisters. And you get that for free with me for doing your work. So when you do some work, we put you in a drawing, and one of you gets a free session with me. When you do your work, we put you in a drawing, and one of you gets a free session with me. And I love that, because I want you to be motivated. Hillary said it really well. She said, and all of them did, I knew my Bible, I read my Bible, but I didn't know that God valued me, right? I'm just the wife. And so to begin to learn differently, to learn the words of what's happening to you, to learn how to say, oh my goodness, I'm resentful, without feeling shame, and saying, I don't want to feel this feeling. What do I need to do to change? And having the support to actually make that change is what we try to help you do and Conquer. One of my lessons for myself when I was working as a biblical counselor, and I never called myself a biblical counselor. I didn't like that name, but I did work for a biblical counseling agency for 10 years, CCEF. And I would call myself a Christ-centered counselor because I saw scripture being weaponized and I didn't like that. And I would speak out about it. But what I found was a lot of theology and not a lot of practical application. How do we actually do this? And I learned tremendously good things. I had wonderful mentors there. So I don't have a negative experience there. But I do know that it's a lot of up here and not enough here. And how do we move our faith from I know God loves me here to I know God loves me here and I feel secure in his love. I'm not afraid of making a mistake and he's going to be mad at me. How do I move? I know I'm an image bearer here, but I don't live like an image bearer here. How do I learn to live like a princess, a daughter of a king, instead of a lonely orphan that nobody loves and everybody hates? This is how you come into conquer sometimes. And we don't want you to stay there. And so we have very practical applications for you to practice what you're learning and the support and the accountability that you might need to actually do it. And the cost is I've only raised the price once in Conquer for 10 years, right? Our costs are high. We have a lot of tech costs, support costs. I have 12 people that I pay to support our ministry. And so we do have to charge something. We give a lot of scholarships. And we would love for you to invest in yourself. Sometimes the saying goes, when you pay attention. And I think investing in yourself is making a commitment. Hey, I'm worth. And I loved Hillary saying, I paid for a year. So I didn't have the hassle of him looking at the credit card every month saying, what is this? What is this? What is this? I paid for a year. You can get a Visa card at Walmart and pay for a year and pay a person back by babysitting or dog sitting or doing whatever you can do, cleaning their house once a week. You can pay that whole back in a month if you clean their house once a week or even twice a month. I pay my cleaning lady over $200 to clean my house, and I don't have a gigantic house, a 2-bedroom house. It's expensive. And so you can do something to earn some money if you want to get well. And Jesus asked that question in John chapter 4. He said, or chapter 5, he asked the man who'd been paralyzed for 38 years, do you want to get well? And so I think that's a really important question for you to ask yourself. Do you want to get well? Your husband's dysfunctional. He may be abusive. He may be narcissistic. But as we looked at the beginning of our time with this, you have some unhealthiness in you too. And each of these women have talked about, I had to learn to set boundaries. I had to learn to take care of me. My husband wasn't going to take care of me. I had to take care of me. And these are the things that God has for you to learn in the hardness of your marriage. And maybe it's how to get out, how to steward your safety. We don't know that, and you don't know that yet. But join Conquer so that you can learn what you need to learn, so that your children have the best, healthiest mama that they could have, even if they're all grown up. My children are still influenced by me for good and for bad, and they're in their 40s, all right? But what I do impacts them. How I live, how I think impacts them still. And I want to be a good example to them of a godly woman, not someone who disappoints them and crashes and burns at the end of their life. That's not what I want. So we have Kelly coming up next. Kelly is our community manager for Conquer. She is my right-hand person. She does so much for our ministry in Conquer. And what I love so much about Kelly, hi.
Hello, good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So what I love so much about Kelly is she's one of the first women that I have ever met that has a really good blend of right brain and left brain. She's a wonderful listener. She's compassionate. She's generous. She's a good teacher. She's organized. She knows tech, and she has it all. She can combine that together. So Kelly, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's so good to be here. I love the live stream. This is one of my favorite things, getting to hear stories from our Conquer sisters.
Didn't you love those girls? I was so proud of them as they shared their stories, and they just, they put their brave on and they were able to share with others who might be thinking this, is this for me or this isn't for me, kind of giving them some clarity.
Yeah, they were a perfect glimpse of what we see in our community, that growth, and it's just so inspiring. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Kelly, you've been with us for a long time. And so what do you love most about our ministry here?
Well, first off, the thing I love the most, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, I joined Conquer as a member, like Hillary and Tammy and Janet. And when I got to the library and saw the value, the resources, I knew I was a lifetime member. I knew it. The biblical wisdom for any relationship, really. I mean, I still, I've been in Conquer. I joined 9 years ago as a member, and I still use the stuff regularly. Like I'm going through some stuff now, and I'm still using Core, and I mean, it's just invaluable. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, everything I learned and have learned about whatever the topic is, boundaries, life, setting, intentions, all of that is in the library. And you can kind of do a card catalog and say, okay, I really want to focus on boundaries right now and just work on that. Or I really want to focus after you get through your Conquer journey, this entire library opens up to you of videos that you can search on topics, or, hey, I'm having trouble with my kids and what do I do? And so how do I teach them to regulate themselves? What do I do? And so those are the kinds of things we're going through. I'm creating a new series called The Healthy Christian Woman. What does a healthy Christian woman look like? And what are her tools in her tool belt that she needs to have? And one of them is you have to learn to calm yourself down. How do you do that? I'm going to teach you. It's in the videos. And so these are videos that we continue to create so that you don't just learn what God says, hey, have peace of, in your heart and mind, but how do you do that? How do I do that in my body when my body is all wired up? So thanks for promoting that, the library, because I think it's really an important part. Why do you, in your experience, now you've been in Conquer both as a member and now as the leader of our community, what do you see as the difference for those who stay longer, who stay a year, who commit, like Hillary's now, it's her third year, this is your 9th year. What do you see in the growth trajectory of women who stay longer versus those who kind of come in for a sample, 3 months, 6 months, whatever, and then drop out? What are the difference in the growth that you see?
There is a difference. And also I'll say there's a difference for those that do their Conquer journey, that do that, those first 6 steps, because that's a great foundation. And then those that stay longer, it really, I guess I'll explain it. The first part of your journey is really the unlearning and the support. I mean, the unloading, with support. We have a place we can finally share everything. And so that's kind of the first step. And then the second part of Conquer is discovering who you are. So after you get through your Conquer journey, after you've settled, and I'll say, actually, one Conquer sister just said it a couple days ago in the community. She said, now I get to invest into my growth and I get to be encouraged by other sisters. She says, it takes a long time for your body to unlearn unhealthy patterns. And so that is really the truth. It takes a while to unlearn all the unhealthy stuff and then come into who we are in Christ. And I love seeing women after they've, regulated and been there a while and settled in, finding out their purpose, their God-given purpose. One of my favorite verses is John 15:16, that God has chosen us for a fruitful, purposeful life. And I love seeing our Conquer sisters come into that, discovering that. And then lastly, they really become empowered to truly be God-centered. So those who stay longer, you see that growth, you start seeing them advocate for others, and it's just a joy to get to see.
Yeah, and we've seen also the other situation where they drop out and then they come back because they've found a man and got back into another situation where they're back into Conquer because they didn't learn what they needed to learn the first time. And so if you are struggling with your marriage, the solution for this problem isn't to find another husband. It's for you to figure out what God's calling you to do with this husband. And then if you are to stay or leave, get healthy as a person, as a woman before the Lord. And then you will have greater clarity about whether or not you can do relationship with another man in a healthy way, or you're going to fall into the same cycle of overfunctioning, being too nice, not having boundaries, all of the above, that may make you a target for someone who can use you and abuse you because you don't have those things that you need that a healthy woman would have. I've heard some good responses. The Healthy Woman's Toolkit is something that people like. So we have already 3 videos in our library about the first 3 tools. And then we've got some other things we're doing in between in our Conquer library. But after in the 2026, I'm going to be doing 3 more videos. So you're going to have 6 to 9 videos that are going to give you one specific tool each month for you to practice, so that when you watch the next one, you've got that one down. So they're building blocks on each one so that you can grow, and you're not just learning theory, you're taking the month to practice it before you get the next video. So those are really, really important. Our goal is for you not just to get safe. Of course, that's the first step, because no one can get healthy if they're not safe. But once you get safe in your marriage, financially, physically, emotionally, mentally, all of the above, or you can't and you know what you need to do, then you can work on the other pieces of it. Kelly, would you be open to sharing a bit of your story, if you can do it in a few minutes? Because I think that one of the things is you are an inspiration to women. You started Conquer as a member, and
Right.
and even our mentors start Conquer as a member. And so most of our women on staff have been in Conquer. We want you to understand that we see some of the good potential in you, and we want you to grow, because God isn't going to waste this in your life. He's going to use this.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So before Conquer, I was just really full of doubt and shame. I believed the words that I'd heard, that it was my fault. And if I could just be submissive, godly enough, that that God would answer my prayers, that he would become the godly man I'd prayed for. And yeah, it just was not working out. Like you said, we can't fix, and it's not our job to fix, because we never can. That's God's, part with him. So one of the things that I've learned in Conquer is really learning what's in my lane, what's mine and what's not mine to work on. So that's been super helpful. And since Conquer, I've learned confidence and resolve, knowing that nothing I could have ever done would have helped him repent or change his bullying behaviors, and that repentance is a choice. It's a work of God, and it's not my job to try harder to fix us or wait years for him to make that choice. So I've been divorced for 9 years without shame. That was one of the biggest fears I had. I was married 27 years, and I was so afraid of being divorced because of the shame. But doing my work in Conquer has really helped unlearn some of that harmful belief system. And as soon as I was divorced, I really, I prepared myself for the grief and all the things, and there really was very little grief and no shame. I can walk free now to live the life that God has for me.
Thank you so much. I think, I love hearing the women who have come through Conquer. Pretty much every day I get a text or an email from someone who says our ministry saved their life, and sometimes their children's life. And so, ladies, we take what we do very seriously, and we really want to invite you to join before we close on Friday, because we do want to spend our energy now, not publicly on Facebook all the time and YouTube. We want to spend our energy in Conquer, helping those women get acclimated, feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling loved on, all of the above, so that they can get their Conquer journey started and get moving and start making progress. And then when they get going, in the next 6 months, we'll open our doors for the next batch. And this is how we roll, because we feel like it's really important for us to give all of our energy now as a team to the women who join. And so that's what we'll do. And so if you're thinking about it, I know one of the persons said they missed the first time, so they had to get on the wait list. And you can do that. But why? Why would you wait when God has opened your heart and opened your mind to this opportunity right here, right now, for you to join Conquer? So thanks, Kelly, so much for being with us. I'm going to let you go and get back to work. And I'm going to answer a couple questions that I see on our tracker. If you have a question, I'll have a little bit of time at the end to answer them. And then I'm going to introduce you to some more of our team, some of our coaches. So let me just answer just a few more kind of easy questions. I have a friend. How can I help her? She's been in a long-term marriage, has been in a very emotionally destructive marriage, and she wants to stay well. Is Conquer only for married women? No. Sometimes someone has already gotten divorced and they join Conquer so that they can learn not to repeat their side of the street, whatever that might be. And sometimes their side of the street is they have some wonderful Christian values of long suffering and forgiveness and kindness and generosity, but they are weak in boundaries and their no and all of those kind of things. And so they need to learn some things as a healthy woman would to be a loving, godly woman with good boundaries so she doesn't get taken advantage of for the next step. Or she has some healing to do that she wants to do in Conquer with other women who have been through that. So in Conquer itself, we break you up, or you break yourself up into divisions of women that you want to hang out with more. We call them our circle groups. Maybe you're going through a divorce, and so you want to hang out with women who are also going through a divorce. Maybe you're not going through a divorce. You're trying, like Hillary, to stay well. And that doesn't mean you're trying to make your marriage better. It means you're staying for other reasons, and you need to stay in a healthy way. And if you're safe and you can do that, it may improve your marriage, it may not, but you're staying. And you want to hang out with other women who are doing that. So that we try to help you find those women in our circle groups so that you can have Zoom calls with them. And those are closer to the path that you're walking on. Some of you are in ministry. Military wives might be another category that we establish if we get a lot of military wives, but we have ministry wives. So you have unique challenges in those different circles. And we want you to meet the women in Conquer who are in those circles that want to meet with other women so that you can use those as support groups and accountability partners and all the different things that we need to get through hard together. So you don't have to be married to enter Conquer, but you have to want to do your work. And it has to be about you have had some history with a destructive relationship that you want to get healthy around. And I complain all the time. It's my default. I don't want to think that way all the time, most of the time. Would Conquer help me get over these bad habits for me? Conquer would, but it would always be in the context of destructive relationships. So most of the library has some other general things like that. But Conquer's main focus is to help you. So if you're living in complaining is a victim mindset, all right? So we call that a victim mindset. And complaining and poor me and life doesn't go the way I want is sort of saying I have no control. I'm just helpless victim all the time. I'm a helpless victim of, my husband, he didn't fill my car with gas. I'm a helpless victim because he doesn't love me like I want. I'm a helpless victim because my children won't listen to me, and poor me, poor me, poor me. And that is a very unhealthy, toxic, soul destroying life story. And you don't want to live that. I'm so glad you asked that question. And Conquer can help that, but it might not be the best program for you if you're not in a destructive relationship. If you're not in a destructive relationship and you kind of think that way, our next coaching group, Empower to Change, will be much more around that thing, change your story, change your life, but it's much more expensive. It's close to $1,500 because it's a coaching group that you're in with a small group of people about changing those patterns of victim thinking. So it's a very different group than Conquer. Conquer is a low cost, lots of help for this problem, and then you can do your own work with support on the other work. Coaching is, you've got a coach right there helping you do the work. So that is a very different, separate program. Okay, so I'm going to answer those two questions. I'm going to put that on hold for now. I'm going to invite Coach Susan up to the stage. Hi, Susan.
Hello, Leslie. So good to be
You've probably seen Susan on our Facebook Lives. I'm so grateful for our team of coaches, Susan and Leanne and Diana, who help with the Facebook Lives and all the questions and things that we do. I could not do it all myself. And so Susan is one of our coaches, and she's been with us for a number of years. And I appreciate you so much, Susan, because you have such a tender heart and such a soft, gentle countenance. And she is a learner, and she loves to put things into practice in very specific ways. I think Susan, her specialty, if I were to pick, Susan's good at lots of things, but what I love about Susan is she's always very willing to notice and pause what's going on inside. So instead of being so caught up in the outside, sometimes she's always paying attention to what's going on inside in her body and her emotions. And she teaches our Conquer women, as well as in her coaching groups and her individual coaching, how to do that earlier than later. Because sometimes if we don't pay attention, we misread the external environment and we make decisions in our reactive mode that later we're regretting. And so Susan's a real good teacher and real good coach in that area. So Susan, I love that you're here. And what's your favorite part about our ministry in Conquer?
Well, thanks for that encouragement. My favorite part about Conquer in general,
Mm-hmm.
I love, well, that it's so encouraging, right? That comes right from the top. Leslie's a very encouraging person. Um, this is a place where women are seen and heard. There is loads of kindness and compassion that fosters healing. And I just love to see how the women surround each other and support each other. That the hashtag or the slogan is "We are stronger together," right? And I really feel that in this place is that where one or more are gathered together, God is present, and there is definitely a presence of God there. And I love also how each woman is encouraged to explore their faith, to test things out themselves, to learn and grow, not just to be spoon-fed information, but to really challenge it and put it into practice and examine for themselves what works and doesn't work for them.
I love that. And I think, you're so right, Susan, that we really do want women to grow up. And so sometimes in our churches, especially our conservative churches, I was just at AACC a couple of weeks ago, American Association of Christian Counselors, and I got into a little argument in one of my sessions with a pastor who was arguing with me because he was a pastor, counseling pastor, and I didn't know him and I didn't know his counseling strategies or anything like that. But one of the points I was making is that as a counselor, whether you're a Christian counselor, biblical counselor, secular counselor, whatever kind of counselor you are, part of good counseling is letting people make choices, that they have to learn to make choices. That's part of empowering them to be a person. God gave Eve and Adam choices, and they made bad ones, but he let them make them, right? And this pastor was having a hard time accepting that concept because as a biblical counselor, pastor, he knew what God said. And so they needed to do what God said. And so we were having this little argument about, do you make someone do what God said? God doesn't make you do what he says. Why would a counselor make you do? Like, well, she can't divorce. I said, that's not your place to tell her what she can and she can't do. And so we were having this public argument with about 300 other folks in there. And I was trying to be, professional and gracious, but I was thinking, this man has it so wrong. And at the end of our little moment, all the women stood up and clapped because they wanted that freedom to make a choice, because that's only how we learn. And so one of the things we do is we help you figure it out. You have to figure it out. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You figure it out. Let's look at God's word. You figure it out. So I'm glad you said that because I really value that.
Mm-hmm. And I can feel that from the ministry that you've started. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's at the foundation.
What do you find most powerful in those first, when a woman joins Conquer, we set her on a specific path. Mm-hmm. After that, you can go your own way. But in that first 8 weeks, we really want them to go on a very specific path. What do you find so powerful about that specific Conquer journey that we put them on?
Well, it's sort of like an onboarding process, right? To help them know what to expect, what things are involved in Conquer, to kind of get their footing, to get acclimated. But it's so much more than that. It's very specifically designed to help them move through a process of understanding and to do some self-exploration of where they are in that process of finding what we call that awakening of what's going on, being committed to the truth of reality and coming to terms with that. And then, as you stated earlier, safety. You can't even begin to flourish or grow if you don't have safety. And so making sure that they're solid in that area is so important. And then just sort of stabilizing, right? Finding that stable place and gaining clarity, more depth of clarity of what's going on, and getting strength and confidence. So we scratch the surface of all that's in the Conquer site so that people can do that examination and find out where they're at, where they need more help, and make sure that foundation is really solid before they're kind of cut loose into designing their own program, right? There's so much within Conquer where they can design what feels right for them, what's most needed for them in their very specific situations.
Yeah, it's sort of a choose your own adventure. After the first 8 weeks in Conquer, then the library opens and you can go to the parental section, you can go to the divorce section, you can go to the healthy woman section, you can go to lots of different sections. And then within those, how do I set boundaries here? All of that. So there's lots of different categories that you can go to, and it's very easy to find. We have a little AI tool there that's called Searchy, and you can, hey, give me all the videos on boundaries, and poof, they'll all start popping out for you. And even if you have a specific boundary question, you can ask those. And so there's lots of ways to access the information that you need and watch the videos. And so that's what we let you loose on doing after you choose your own adventure. And then you can come back to the Facebook page and ask questions. Hey, I watched this video, but I didn't quite understand what she meant by that. Anybody else watch this video? And what did you get out of it? And those are the ways that you continue to interact and grow.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the changes that you see as women commit to going through this program? What are some of the changes that you've observed in our women as they've done their own work?
Yeah, it's so many changes. And as I was watching Janet, your guest on there, I love how she just changed her mindset, and she talked about pretending she's a spy.
I like that too.
I mean, that's powerful. And you could see the brightness in her eyes, the excitement, a woman flourishing, right? That's what I love to see, is when a woman starts to see her purpose and the power that she can hold by doing her own work and joining with God in that with a purpose. Like she's on a mission. I think she used that terminology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that you're on a mission with God, and it's not just anxiety producing and fearful. You can turn that into excitement, where, God, what are you going to show me in this? There is a brightness that comes into women's eyes. There is an excitement about life again, and that ability to flourish, right? To actually grow where they're planted, or to decide where they need to be in life in order to flourish.
Mm-hmm. I think of that verse in John 10:10 where it says, I have come that they might have life and have it abundantly, flourishing. Yeah. We're not meant to languish, ladies. We're not meant to be someone else's lightning rod to kick around for their anger. That's not how the human person was designed. Even in the culture of slavery, the Bible very clearly warns, both in the Old Testament and New Testament, masters, if you have a slave, do not treat them dishonorably. They are a co-image bearer. And so even in a culture where there was patriarchy and slavery, God spoke to them. He didn't say, change all that. That would have been too dramatic. They wouldn't have even understood that in that time. But he said, hey, if you have power over someone, you better use that very, very well. Because if you damage that person, you're accountable to me. And this was about slavery. Can you imagine in marriage how God is going to say, what are you thinking, church, when you talk about headship and submission? That's not my design for marriage. Now, I'm not talking about headship and submission. I'm talking about slave master in marriage, when they misuse headship passages to think I own you and I can control you and you have to do what I want. That's not biblical or God's design for human beings. Even if they're a slave, it's not his design.
True. And women aren't just put on the earth to make sure that a man flourishes. Right. And I think sometimes that is the thought process, is what do I got to do to make sure that he's flourishing in his life so that I reap some of those benefits, or that we have a peaceful, thriving marriage or relationship or family. It is really about finding your own flourishing. Yeah. God has a purpose for every woman.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the different outcomes that you've seen for women who stay longer in the program, who stay, they kind of really commit to that year, sometimes 2 years? What are some of the outcomes you've seen as they spent more time doing their work, being in community, having that support, having access to the library?
Yeah, we talk a lot in this community about getting rid of old patterns and developing new patterns. We talk about that in terms of husbands, like looking for change, but that's true for women as well, is to unwork those old patterns and really fully develop a new pattern. You need a good long time, and you need a lot of support to be able to do that. And as you're working out your new pattern, there's going to be a lot of dips and twirls and some new confusion about, oh, I didn't know this could happen, and where am I now? And so you need new videos. You need new support systems to come into place to really help you get through those humps until you feel like you can fully walk on your own 2 feet. But not only that, I mean, we're seeing today that people have stayed in a long time and now they're serving in the program, right? And there's so much health and growth that happens from that point too, is that when you not only work on your journey, there's some growth that happens as you come alongside others and help them in their journey.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you become a mentor or you're just a long-time member, that is part of your growth as well, to pay it forward to others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and research in psychology is showing that in post-traumatic growth, that when we can realize, wow, you know, in 1 Corinthians 4, I think, or 2 Corinthians 4, it says, you know, God has allowed you to be hurt. God comforts us with the comfort that we receive when we're hurt, so that we can comfort others with the comfort that we've received from God. And so playing it forward and using the skills that we've learned, the language that we've learned, the words that we've learned, to mentor someone else in your church or in your family or your neighbor, and be able to be a wise woman, a godly woman who can rightly discern the word of God, to a woman who's struggling, who might be in a very patriarchal, conservative church that has believed that women are given to men to help them flourish, versus they're given to themselves by God for them to flourish as well.
Yes. Yeah, there's so much continuation of growth and helping somebody else.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that shouldn't be missed.
Yeah. Thanks, Susan. I really appreciate you and your ministry here and showing up for today. And is there anything that you would want to say to a woman who's sitting on the fence and not sure she would be a good fit in Conquer?
Well, I think if you're here and you're considering that you might be a good fit, I'm saying you're probably a really good fit. And to just step out. And if you can't do a year, start with a month. I don't think you're going to regret that, because you're going to be met with a lot of kindness and compassion and encouragement to really help move you forward. And that will confirm for you that you're in the right place. There is room for you here and you belong.
Thanks, Susan. Appreciate you. All right, God bless. I'm gonna let you go. Coach Diana isn't able to be with us today. She had a family emergency, but I'm going to invite Coach Leanne up. And Leanne's got some new glasses.
Well, hello. I do. I always get a little bit, have a little bit of FOMO when I hang out with you. And you have these really cool, fun, funky glasses. And my glasses, Leslie, my lenses got super scratched. And so it was time. So I decided to dive into the land of chunky.
Yeah, I think they look great.
Well, thank you. And thank you. That's so sweet of you to say. And it's so great to be here with many of our friends on this live stream. What an amazing day we've had so far.
Yeah, we have really had an amazing day. And so, Leanne, you've been here a long time. You do a lot of work with our organization. I appreciate you so much. I love your style. Leanne, I'm going to tell you a secret about Leanne. Now, you already know she's the most extroverted person in our team. She can be the life of the party. She's got the red hair. She's got the look of the party girl already. But Leanne has a closet full of costumes of all different kinds, because Leanne loves, she took her kids to Disneyland and dressed up as Snow White? You were the Seven Dwarfs, so she's on the beach in her Snow White costume with her Seven Dwarfs. Adorable. So when I needed a costume to go somewhere, because it was a costume party, of course, I didn't have a costume, but I said, Leanne, do you have a costume? And I dressed up as Dolly Parton. So Leanne had a Dolly Parton costume, and it was so fun. So that's one fun secret about Leanne that probably you have no hard time understanding that that's what she would do. But Leanne has a love of costumes and gadgets and all kinds of fun playthings, right?
Well, I do. And I think, that's part of even what we have been exploring here in Conquer is, when I think of some of the things that I love best, even about being here on this live stream with you today, is each one of us, God has created us uniquely. And sometimes some of the silly, fun parts, the creative parts of us, can get lost in the stress and in the chaos. And so as we do our own work and we clear away some of the stress and the chaos, some of our creativity, some of our fun can be reintroduced and invited into our lives again, where perhaps it has been gone or even absent for many, many years.
You know, one of the things I've seen, Leanne, with destructive marriages, especially in my marriage counseling, when I would see both the husband and the wife, is that sometimes the wife would be, a very strong, fun extrovert, and she married an introvert, and he would shame her for her extrovertness. He would make fun of her, oh, you got those goofy glasses, they look terrible, or oh, you always have to buy costumes, what's wrong with you, nobody else does. Anything that she would do that would be her spark, her unique self, he would just blow it right out, and she would be like sucked dry. I mean, completely sucked dry of herself. And this is the huge red flag that you are not a person to love, you are an object to use. And as soon as someone continues to blow out your flame, you're to be a light, your own unique light that God has made you to be. And when you're married to someone, they're to fan those into flame so that you shine brighter and brighter, not squash you so that you don't even have a candle lit at all. And so this is such an important moment, as we're honoring Leanne for Leanne, that some of you can't be yourself because you're married to someone who won't let you. And you've allowed that. And so you have a hard choice to make. And Leanne, you came to a point, I'm not saying Dwayne, your husband did that to you, but you came to a point of saying, hey, I'm not living the person that God made me to be, and I need to make some changes.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's, I've been married for a really long time, and I haven't always embraced my red hair, right? I haven't. And so, there's and as we walk with women, Leslie, and I hear it, I see it in the feed. Leanne is the last theatrical. I'm sorry, that just caught my, you know what? I can be. And okay, I love that you brought that up, right, Paige, because I'm gonna pause here for just a minute, because this is part of my story. So I thought I had to perform. I had to become a chameleon at different areas in my life if somebody else wasn't happy with how I was showing up. And maybe it made them feel a little uncomfortable. Maybe my bright light, they thought, dimmed their light, instead of our bright lights together can absolutely be a ray of, like Susan said, flourish that could draw people to Jesus. All right. And so, Leslie, working with you all of these years, doing my own work, getting, trained as a coach, all the things helped me to discover who it is that God created me to be, stamped into my DNA. So then I went from this performing Leanne, right, where I thought I had to be a certain way, turning into a chameleon, into actually embracing who it is God created me to be. I didn't need to pretend anymore. And so now my costumes, the things that I have, are for fun. They weren't a mask. They weren't a way of me, numbing out. Mm-hmm. I don't have to perform for anyone. All I get to do is be present with Jesus and invite him into my fun. He's the creator of my fun. Jesus was fun, girls.
He was.
And so sometimes, like I said, our creativity, our fun, our spark can be diminished by destructive relationships. And, let it not be from today forward. Mm-hmm. Let us just say, you know what? Let's bring back a little bit more of who God created us to be. In every moment, we have a choice.
Yeah. And in your experience over the years, why are the first 8 weeks of our Conquer journey, so powerful for these women who start to join? It's very structured at the beginning, not after you're done, you kind of can do your own thing, but it's pretty structured of what we want you to do, because we found that when women came in and we just let them kind of wander, they kind of got lost. They didn't know where to go. They felt a little like, oh, I don't know where do I start? And so we created this journey out of the feedback that you gave us, that you needed some direction at first to kind of get your feet wet And so, what are some of the powerful things that you've seen women achieve in this first 8 weeks of their membership?
Oh, well, one thing I love about that question is I'm already seeing it happen today in the chat, right? Okay, so women are given a language for what they have been living in and experiencing. And the other thing is, just like I have these new glasses, women are given permission to see for the first time what's really going on. Because there's a lot of theatrics in the church. There's a lot of pretending, and there is a lot of misconceptions and bad teachings. And so to be in a space where a woman can all of a sudden be heard, seen, and known, and be able to share what's really going on inside of their hearts and inside of their minds. And there's words that we share a lot here in Conquer. You're not crazy. You are not crazy. No, you are just starting to see what's really going on with you. And you're not alone. You're not alone. Many women in destructive relationships have felt isolated, Leslie, as we've spoken about even today. And so I love that the intention of the first 8 weeks, it builds community. It helps build connection with one another with the amazing content that is there. And it's the stepping ground because women come into this space for lots of different reasons. And we've seen a lot of that in the chat today. One consistent thing in Conquer is that we're Christ-centered. And even throughout the 8 weeks, we continue to point you to Jesus. We continue to help you to see that your safety, your clarity, your strength, your confidence, your stability matters. It matters for the whole collective. It matters to each woman personally. And goodness, it matters to God. And oh my goodness, when one woman gets healthier, their homes get healthier, their communities get healthier, their churches get healthier. And that's a beautiful thing to witness.
Those who stay longer, those who are in Conquer for, longer, we've seen that they grow stronger, they grow more confident. What are some of the things that you've noticed about women who kind of just, aren't sure of really committing, but those who have committed and have been in the program for at least a year? What are the differences that you see for those who just, kind of say, well, I'll try, but I'm not sure I'm going to really hang out there very, very much?
Well, you said a very optimal word right there. You said try. So women go from trying to grow and mature and learn to training. That is one thing that I will see, even as you started. Okay, so I have my as you started the workshop, right? I started taking notes. This is something I see that happens with women. I've been around Conquer for many, many years. And one thing that I notice about women who've been here for a long time is they keep doing their own work. The layers of learning, the layers of healing, the layers of everything go deeper. And there's so much threaded into it. And so, I don't know, I still have unhealthy areas in my life too. I still get confused, just like some of our women here. I still get exhausted sometimes. I still can play the blame game with myself. But one thing that I know, when you're consistent in Conquer, you engage differently. And then you start to see this quiet courage that gets built up. And you see a strength and a clarity. I mean, it just really does come in layers. And I see the women owning their worth and their value because we keep reminding one another. The world will tell you a lot of other things. And, even Leslie, as you, at the beginning of this live, you were talking about setting intentions. And I did it. My intention is to be present and open and curious every day. And I think the women who have been in Conquer for a long time, they regain their voice. Some of them find their voice for the very first time in decades. And their voices get stronger. And, we did a live about being bitter, hard-hearted, or being honorable before the Lord. And I see women turn, I saw myself turn from scared and afraid and a little bit reactive to more responsive, more self-controlled, more mature. And I don't know, I call it, this is sacred change.
Mm.
And we get to celebrate with one another as we do that. We really do establish relationships with each other. And it's palatable for a woman to know that she is deeply loved.
I think you couldn't have said it better, Leanne, because I think that so many of our women feel unloved. And, when you grow up, I felt that way. When I grew up, I didn't feel, loved. I wasn't loved by my mom. I wasn't. She told me. So I wasn't loved. And so how do you feel loved when someone tells you you're not lovable? And so it's very easy to get caught in I need to find someone who will love me because I never was loved. I need to find someone who will love me. And of course we want relationships, and of course we want to build those relationships, and we want to help you learn to do that and to recognize the difference between a healthy relationship, even between other women, and an unhealthy relationship. Some of you have learned that being superwoman, being extra good, extra kind, extra giving, extra smart, extra generous gets you some kudos, gets you some love. But what does it cost you? It costs you your no. It costs you your authenticity. It costs you true friendship. I remember, and I've shared this story before, but I remember, Leanne, working with a woman in a coaching relationship, and she didn't know if she really had any friends. She had a lot of ministry relationships where she gave and she gave and she gave, and people took and they took and they took, but they weren't really friends. And so we did this experiment. So this is what we talk about in Conquer, of doing it right in the here and now. So she was telling me this, and she said, I don't really feel like, this person's coming over for lunch and I'm having a hard day and I don't want to have her come. I said, well, why don't you just text her and say, I'm having a hard day. Let's cancel for today. Let's reschedule. And she said, oh, I could never do that. I said, why can't you just be honest with your friend? So this was her first red flag. Well, she'll be disappointed. So what if she's disappointed? What will that show you? So she texted her friend and she said, I'm not doing so well. I don't think I can do lunch today. Now, if you were her friend, Leanne, how would you text her back? And put it in the chat. How would you text her back, ladies, if you were this lady's true friend and your friend says, hey, I'm not doing well today, I'm going to cancel lunch? How would you text her back? What would you say?
I love that beautiful question. Well, I would say, hey, how can I best support you right now? I am here for you. I'll love you. I'll be right there if she's close.
I'll bring lunch, all of the above, right? That's a normal, healthy relationship. Well, my client on the other end, she's texting her friend right there when I'm talking to her. And she said, this is what she said to me. Okay, let me know when you're feeling better. What does that tell you? It tells you this person is not your friend. She's a taker, and she may need to be a taker, but then understand what this relationship is. It's a ministry relationship, which is fine. Right. But it's not a close relationship. And so in real time, this woman got to see, oh my gosh, I don't have any real friends. And that's a very sad thing to be in, because she had to overfunction in order to even get any attention. She had to be the hero of everybody else's story, but she had no story of her own. And so this is what we want to help you think through. Once you've cleared the maze a little bit, Conquer will help you think through this. Who are you? Who did God make you to be? And we love the verse in Proverbs where it says, a woman of strength and dignity who can smile at the future unafraid.
Leslie, that's so beautiful. And, that's something that I really appreciate about Conquer and about what we're creating here right now, here in 2025. So if you're watching this on replay, yes, this is current. Conquer is open now, not, for a long period of time, but, we're open now. We're open today. And I think the women who have been in Conquer for a long time, the women who have been in Conquer for a short amount of time, are very unique, and they get to witness something that you just spoke about, and that's wisdom. Because in Conquer, just like you helped your client seek the Lord and realize that there is another way, perhaps you don't have all the answers about how to engage in your relationships, but just because you've always engaged in your relationships in one way doesn't mean you need to continue to engage in them the same way moving forward. when we can honor the one who gives wisdom by continually looking there, our lives change. And the learning does come in layers and it's sacred. But if we are not willing to have those conversations, like we see it in the Conquer Facebook page all the time, right, Leslie, about women asking questions. And a question might just be like what you said with your client. Hey, somebody just shot me down for dinner. I must have no value because they're not coming. Well, what's another way to look at that? And so as we learn together, and I know our Conquer Women help me, you help me, our coaching team helps me, our admin team help me to reflect a little bit deeper, to see things that I can't see. Just like my previous glasses were so scratched, I had all that like anti-glare was all scratched off. It was such a distraction. But I had to make the decision to get a new set of lenses. And that is one thing that I love about Conquer. It's like a new set of lenses to view our relationships through, our relationships with ourselves, with God, and with other humans.
Wow, that's so powerful, Leanne. And thank you so much because, you speak words both as a professional, but you also speak words as a woman who's learned these lessons as I have. You want to be with people who have walked the walk.
Yes.
There's lots of people out there in our church who know it up here, and maybe your husband's one of these, but do not live it here. I don't want to learn from someone who knows it up here and doesn't live it here, because to me, that's inauthentic. God wants us to show him through the way we live, that we've repented of our sins and turned to God, not by our theology, but our practical application of that theology. And so I really want to help you make a decision for yourself. If this resonates with you, if you are sitting there and maybe you've never even put one word on the chat because you're scared, but if this is resonating with your soul, I want you just to put your hand on your heart, and another one on your belly. And if this is resonating inside of you that I need this, then this might be a very brave step forward, because maybe your husband will disapprove, and maybe this will put a little crimp in your budget, and maybe this will take up some of your time, but I think you're worth it. God thinks you're worth it. And it may not be for you because maybe you're not oriented towards Christ or faith, and that's not something you're interested in. And so this program would not be the best for you, because that's what we talk about. We talk a lot about Jesus and how he wants to help you, and how he wants to help you be fully alive and whole. You are his workmanship, Ephesians 2 says, created by God to do good things. You are to live an abundant life, not an easy life sometimes, but a fruitful, abundant life. And Leanne, you used a word that I think is really important. The Bible doesn't tell us to try to be godly, but it does tell us to train yourself to be godly. And training takes time, and it takes repeat time. I've read through the Bible, I don't know, maybe the whole Bible. I mean, I read the Bible every day, but I've read through the whole Bible maybe, 20 times in my lifetime. All right. It's a lot of reading through the Bible. And I always see something I never saw before. So God has those layers that you weren't able to see it at that level of maturity, that now you're able to see it at a different level of maturity. And Jesus tells us, I don't want you just to believe in me. I want you to believe me. I want you to believe me. I tell you the truth. I tell you the truth. Over 70 times he says that in the Gospels. And so if this resonates with you, you might be scared, but it might be time for you to take the step for you to get safe, to get sane, to get strong, and to begin to be able to be the woman that God called you to be. And whether your husband appreciates that or doesn't appreciate that, you don't know. But God will appreciate that, and your children will appreciate that. And you will appreciate that. And that will be part of your new story, the next chapter. So, Leanne, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much. Anything else you want to say before we begin to wrap up?
Well, I just, I love God's word too. And so I will just leave this here, Proverbs 2:2, if that's okay. Is it okay if I share one of my favorite verses based on what you just shared? Turn your ears to wisdom and concentrate on understanding. And some of us get super confused And so we can count on God's word to help us to go there. So that's my encouragement and my exhortation to all of us as we step into the rest of our day. Thanks, Leslie, for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for being here and being on my team. All right, I'll let you go. You know, I read a verse this year for the first, I read this verse probably 20 times, but I never saw it before. Has that ever happened to you? And I'm going to read it to you because it's probably a surprise verse. It was a shocking verse to me. I'd never seen it before. It's always been in the Bible. And this is what I'm talking about. God shows you different layers. And this is the verse. It's in Exodus chapter 6. So you know the story, the Exodus story. Moses is helping the children of Israel, follow him, and they don't want to follow him. And here's what it says in chapter 6, verse 9. So Moses told the people of Israel what the Lord had said. Okay, so he's saying, this is what God's saying. I'm telling you, this is what God is saying. But they refused to listen. They had become too discouraged by the brutality of their slavery. Listen to that. God sees you're discouraged by the brutality of your oppression in your marriage. And when you are discouraged at that place, he's saying, it's hard to listen. It's hard to believe God. God is saying, hey, I'm going to free the Israelites. Come with Moses and let my people go. And all the story, we know the story. And God is acknowledging that for some group of those people, they couldn't believe, they couldn't hear because they were so discouraged by the brutality of their oppressors. I think he's speaking to some of you here today that you have lived in an oppressive marriage way too long. That the voice of God sounds like an angry dictator to you. Sounds like a scolding, shaming God who's ready to catch you at any mistake you make and send you to hell. And that is not God. That's a caricature of God. That is not God. But we understand. God tells us some people are way too discouraged by the brutality of their oppression that they can't even hear the truth anymore. And if that's you, we want you to know that there's room for you here to relearn who God is. There's room for you here to be discouraged and not be able to hear scripture clearly. And for you to ask a million questions. And for you to have your doubts. And for you to have your questions. And for you to be heard and not just have to listen. There's room for you in Conquer. That's one of our highest values, is for you to learn to have your voice and for you to use it, to ask questions, to disagree, to challenge things, because that's part of your growth. And if you can't even do it in a safe container like Conquer, then where are you going to be able to do it in the outside world? But we understand that some of you, and God really showed me this year when I read it, I was like, it took my breath away. Moses told the people what the Lord had said. Good news. We're going. We're leaving. And they couldn't hear it because they had become too discouraged. If that's you, my friend, you're here for a reason. And it may be hard for you to hear that there's any good news on the other side of this, but there is. But you might not be able to hear it just yet. But I just encourage you to take a step of faith, blind faith, because you're not seeing it. Blind faith, trust us, that we will help you get through this season in a place where you can hear God again. And he's a good, good God who loves you and cares about you. So I wish we had more time to wrap up with questions, but I'm going to do an exercise that I would love for us to have a little bit of breathing room to do before we go. All right? And then if we have time at the end, I can do that. So grab your pen. Can you grab your pen? And I want you to close your eyes. And we're going to go back to your future self, the one that you saw at the beginning of our time together. And if you came here late and you didn't do that exercise, I want you to imagine that you did do your work and you were all done with Conquer and you were a much better version of yourself. that you are the woman that you most want to be, a woman of noble character, who has strength and dignity on her shoulders. Strength and dignity. She smiles at the future unafraid. She doesn't live afraid of what people think, of doing something wrong, of getting God mad. She lives confidently, knowing that she is a daughter of the King. And her Father, God, loves her. And if she makes a mistake, he'll correct her and he'll show her and she'll know. And she can fix it and correct it. She doesn't have to live, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? We wouldn't want our children to live that way. Why would God want us to live that way? So your future self, if you were the woman you most want to be, what would she say to you right now? What would be your next right step to becoming more of that woman that you see? What would be your next right step to become more of that woman? What are you going to do with your one precious life? You only have one. And I'm really, really conscious of that. I just had a birthday. I'm getting older. I told you I'm in the fourth quarter. I'm in the fourth quarter. My dad, who's 96, and I are in the same age category, old. For the first time in our life, we laughed about that because he was always middle-aged. I was younger. Now we're both in the same category, old. I'm going to see him tomorrow for dinner. He's flying to Phoenix with my brother. And we're both old. But when you get old, you think differently. You see things differently through a different lens. I'm glad I've done my work. I'm glad I will finish well, whenever that is. Could be 20 years from now, if I live as old as him. But it's the last quarter. I want to be my best self. I want to be the woman that God designed me to be from when I was knit together in my mother's womb, who didn't love me. God loved me. Your mother might not have loved you either. Maybe your husband doesn't love you. That doesn't mean you're not lovable. That doesn't mean you're not worth it. God designed you from scratch, created you for purpose and value, gave you dignity and worth. He's the one who gets to define you. And he's saying, you've got a noble self in there. Where is she? Where is she? And what would be your next right step today for you to becoming closer to who she is? You get one life. You get to live it. Are you going to live it in deference to someone else who tells you how to live it? Or is that your decision as a child of God to steward your one precious life? Let me review some verses with you. In Proverbs 4, it says, guard your heart above all else. It is the wellspring of life. It doesn't say guard your marriage above all else. It says guard your heart above all else, for it is the wellspring of life. Who does that for you if you don't? In 1 Corinthians 10, it says, take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ, because our thoughts matter. How we see things creates our future. We talked about that earlier. Who does that for you if you don't? And if you don't know how to, where are you going to learn to? We are to be transformed by the renewing of our mind in Romans 12. Who does that for you if you don't? You have work to do to become your most noble self. In Ephesians 4, it says, put off your old self, corrupted with its deceitful desires, and put on your new self, your noble self, which is created to be like who? Like God. Your image of God is being restored in you. That is his will for you. You are not to be refashioned in your husband's image of you, but in God's image of you. Who does that for you if you don't? Train yourself to be godly. Who does that for you if you don't? What is your next right step? It might be to read your Bible tomorrow. That might be your next right step. It might be you need to get yourself into some trauma treatment because you're so dysregulated you can't even think. It might be that you need to join Conquer and get some support and get some tools to be a healthier, more godly woman and figure out what you're going to do about your marriage and need the support and the community of like-minded women to help you do that. The worst thing that you could do is do nothing. and continue the same that you've always done. Why would you waste another year of your one precious life? But that is your choice. And people do it all the time. They've done studies of people who are dying and what they regret. And you know what? Like, I think about, what will I regret if I die tomorrow? I have no regrets. I've done all that I have been called to do. I have no regrets. The people who die with regrets die because they didn't do what they knew they were supposed to do. They're not regretting what they did do, and I shouldn't have done that. They're not regretting I shouldn't have divorced, or I should have gone to college. They're not regretting what they didn't do. I mean, they don't regret their sins that they did. They're regretting what they didn't do that would have made a better life for themselves. I never did speak up for myself. I never did take that juicy art class. I always wanted to learn to paint, and I never learned because I was too afraid. I was afraid of making a mistake. I was afraid of somebody being mad at me. I was afraid of my husband not liking it. I was afraid of spending the money. I was afraid to invest in myself. You want to have those kind of regrets in the fourth quarter of your life? No, you don't. But only you get to decide that. And whatever age you are right now, whether you're in your 30s or your 50s or your 70s, you get to decide how you want to live your one precious life. And if you're in a destructive marriage or getting out of one, I hope one of your first choices is, I want to be a God-centered woman and listen to his voice, because I've made plenty of mistakes on my own. I no longer want to lean on my own understanding, but in all my ways acknowledge him, and he will direct my path forward. I don't know whether to stay. I don't know whether to leave my marriage. I don't know about that yet. And you don't. It's okay. But what I do know is I'm unhappy, I'm upset, I'm angry, I can't be myself. I don't know which direction to go. I don't know how to grow. I don't know how to say no. I don't know how to have boundaries. I don't know how to be a person. I'm just a wife. I'm just a mom. I'm just a role. And I don't want to have those regrets. And if that's you, then I would highly recommend that you push that button and join Conquer. And if you're brave enough to put both feet in, I would encourage you to join for a year, because that will give you the commitment that you need. Women who stay in Conquer for at least a year do better than those who kind of rush through the Conquer journey and think they're done, because that's not enough. Just like you can't rush through the Bible and think you're going to be mature. It just doesn't work that way. And so I just want to be really honest with you. You can do it, but it's not going to give you the same outcome as it would if you really invested in it for yourself and did the work. And it is work. It is work. So you have to prioritize that I am worth doing the work. And I think you probably do that in your personal life in some ways. I imagine that you're worth doing the work of bathing every day, brushing your teeth every day, combing your hair every day, putting your clothes on in a organized way every day, ironing your shirt, or, making sure you're not wearing dirty, ripped clothes. Some of you are at a place that you're doing that. You don't even care. You're not taking care of yourself. But you're investing some time to take care of yourself. But it's all on the outside. And I'm not faulting that. I do it. But what about the inside? Your character, your talents. Paul tells young Timothy, fan into flames the gift that God has given you. Our gifts come in little packages inside. I didn't even know I had a gift to write. In fact, I told God I can't write. Don't make me write any books, and I don't want to go for my PhD, because I believed, mindset, I couldn't do it. Joke's on me. Wrote 8 books. I can write. But I didn't believe it. I didn't know it. And because I told myself I couldn't, I didn't. What are you telling yourself you can't? And you don't. And you won't. But what if you changed that story? What if you said, you know what? $370 or $37 a month. I can figure out how to make that much money. I could dog sit. I could walk dogs. Once a month, I could do that and make $370 for a year if I paid $37 a month. I could babysit one kid after school for 3 days or kindergarten, whatever. You could do something. You could. And that's part of your growth, of saying, I can do it. I can figure it out. I can make a way. And I highly encourage you to do that, because that makes you feel strong. when you don't feel helpless. And so we do offer scholarships. We've notified those who have gotten Conquer scholarships. We usually give 10 to 15 full year scholarships for women who apply for them. So we have done that. We want to. We are generous as a company. But we also believe that for many of you, you have the resources. You just have to spend them differently. So maybe you don't get to get your nails done. Maybe you give up some lattes. Maybe you do something different that you have to shift, or maybe you have to work somewhere else a little bit more. It's not thousands of dollars. It's a little bit more, and you're worth it, I think. So I'm going to answer a couple questions. I'd like to see the feed a little bit. My vibe is calming. I love to hear that. It's interesting that you say that, though. So every morning I wake up and I spend time, my intentions, and the very first word that I use is calm. You put peace or calm. I want to feel. How do I want to feel today? How do I want to show up? Calm, peaceful, because I have lived 45 years of horrible, horrible anxiety. I don't want to go back to that world anymore, ever, right? Lived in a very traumatic household, had a lot of anxiety as a kid, bit my nails still. I'm tempted to bite my nails sometimes when I get anxious. I have lived in a lot of anxiety. So calm is my word. So it's interesting that you get that vibe, because that's how I intend to show up every day. But I center, I'm saying I am going to be calm today. I've got a couple other words too. They're all C's. Do you want to know what they are? I'm going to be calm. I'm going to be clear. I'm going to be centered in Christ. I am going to be compassionate. I am going to be curious. I'm going to be creative. I'm going to be connected. I'm going to be courageous. Those are my words. And I'm going to be congruent, the last one. Congruent means I'm going to match. I'm not going to be a fake person. So those are my C words. Every morning I say them to myself. And do I get there every morning? No. This is what I do. So I'll give you practical. I say the words. And then I teach myself to notice, I'm not very calm right now. What do I need to do to get back to calm? I'm not very congruent right now. I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. What do I need to do to be congruent? So it's not that I am that all the time. That's my aim. And I notice when I'm not there and get myself back there. That's good mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Tip for the day. Yeah, it is hard sometimes to believe. It is sometimes. Love those words. Words matter, don't they? And you heard from the different women how powerful it was for them to put some things into words for themselves. We teach you the words. We actually give you the words sometimes to say so that you have a start. If you need to confront someone, if you need to ask for someone, if you need to set boundaries, what words do you use? We teach you that so that you can practice with some words and then till you get your own, right? So that you know how to say things and how not to say things, because words matter. How you say things. So, for example, if I'm going to set a boundary, here's a big misunderstanding. You can't talk to me that way. Even if I say it nice, please don't talk to me that way. My boundary is you can't talk to me that way anymore. You know what he's going to say to you? Want to bet? Watch me. And now you go, oh, boundaries don't work. That's because you said it wrong. And you don't understand what boundaries are. So let me show you the right way to say it. When you talk to me that way, I can't hear you. I'm going to end this conversation until we can have a more productive conversation. Boom, you're out of there. And I said that to my teenagers. I would say that to my husband. I can't hear you when you talk to me that way. So it's the boundaries on me. I'm not listening. And I wouldn't say it that way. That would be disrespectful. But I would say to my kids, hey, when you talk to me that way, I can't hear you. And I would sometimes say, I heard that my whole childhood. I am not ever going to hear those kind of words again. So when you can talk to me nice, I'll listen. And I just walk right away. My boundary is I am not allowing myself to be emotionally abused ever again. Ever again. When you start up, done. I'm done with this conversation. That's my boundary. And I have 100% control over that. Even if I have to put my hands in my ears, I have 100% control over that. I don't have control over what comes out of your mouth, but I have control over what I'm going to listen to. And I'm not listening to that. Boom, I'm out of here. When you can do that with humor, with love, with care, it makes a difference. It makes a difference. You anxious? I can't imagine. Well, I was very, very anxious, and I can still feel those feelings, and I know how to work them now. I know how to calm myself down. I know how to walk in faith. I didn't know how to do that, even though I was a believer. And that's I think the mistake that churches are doing, is that all they want you to do is know the truth, know the truth, know the truth, but you don't know how to live the truth. And so people are still very dysfunctional and unhealthy, but they know all the stuff up here, but they don't know how to live it in their life, in their body. And we teach you that in Conquer. So I hope we see you on the other side, ladies. Really have enjoyed this time together. I hope it's benefited you. And I'm going to go have breakfast now because I haven't eaten yet and I'm getting a little hungry. My body is telling me time to refresh and regroup. All right. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.